Hey, it helps if you unmute your microphone. That's today's tip from the land of production. Hi, what's going on? It's me, Jeff Gerstmann. I'm here representing the Jeff Gerstmann Show, which is a podcast. It's about video games, I'm told. At least it is this week. We'll see. Next week, it's I don't know. Next week, it's probably all about. It's probably like refrigerator repair. We keep a rotating schedule. I mean, we've been doing this video game for a little bit, but honestly, video games are over. Everyone knows this, unless you like farming. Video games are done. No, this is what's going on. The Nintendo Direct happened this morning, so I've already been on one, as they say. We talked over that a little bit earlier in the day. Archive of that is over on YouTube over at guard.bike. That's your shortcut to get over there. Hey, this show's on Patreon. You want an ad-free version of the show? Of course you do. Head over to patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann for more details on that. Of course, there's additional bonus content, the Jeff Gerstmann Hall of Fame. Also, a Patreon exclusive, and the Patreon exclusive podcast, Game Boys 2 Men. We got 2 episodes of that out, and the next one is going to be delving into the world of the Sega CD. And so I've been looking at dates and I've been looking at screenshots of Ground Zero, Texas, and shaking my head like this, like, oh no. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. Oh, I sure did love the Sega CD, but boy, the Sega CD sure did not love anyone back for very long. But we'll get into that on the next episode of Game Boys to Men. So check that out over at dopeassvideogames.com is your little shortcut to get over there. If you want to do that, you can enjoyyourgaming.com. Also, I mean, all these are all URLs. I've got a Tumblr at jeff.zone that I should probably, that's the actual good URL that I should redirect to some of this other stuff instead of my frickin' Tumblr. I'm going to do that one of these days. I'm going to do that. You're going to go to jeff.zone. It's not going to go to that fucking Tumblr anymore. You'll have to go to jeffgerstmann.tumblr.com. You want to see that thing. And of course, hey, if you're on Twitch live here, it's September. You can sign up and subscribe to that, and you get hot emotes. But sign up for the Patreon. You get on the Discord. The Discord's been a fun place to discuss things like the Steam Deck and stuff. And lately, a lot of there's been a lot of wrestling talk. But we cordoned off a specific zone. A proper WrestleFest area for people that want to discuss that stuff, so it does not bleed out into the other channels. Also, a lot of AI images lately. I know it's gauche. I know it is also played out, but I just, now that there are so many different ways to run stable diffusion and stuff like that locally, and not have to rely on weird websites that take too long and all this other stuff. I have been firing that up at night when I'm like watching, usually when I'm watching wrestling or something, when I got TV on or something like that, and just like, randomly generating some images and stuff. I'm trying to see if I have, the thing you can do is you can feed it a starter image, which is a really silly way to kind of, rein in the effects of it and do a bunch of, here, I'll drag one of these into this window real quick. If you're watching the video live, here's Joe Biden on the cover of Mass Effect, I believe is what I typed in there, and I fed it the front cover of Mass Effect, and that's what it came up with. That's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. And I don't know, it AI generated someone in the background. A lot of pictures of someone who looks vaguely like CM Punk eating muffins. I don't know. My mind is a wasteland, and I don't know. The AI art stuff is fascinating and also very cut and dry, I think, in a lot of ways, where you have a lot of artists who made a lot of images that have then been like scanned and thought about by this AI trained model and the ethics of that. And now you're starting to see people like generating AI art and then entering it into art competitions, and just like it's a really interesting time around that stuff, and it really sucks. For that, it's shitty in that way, where you've got people that are actual artists doing actual work, and then their work is being like glanced at by computer vision, and the computer eyes are then thinking of that sort of stuff, are influenced by that sort of stuff when it comes time to generate fake art. And so you have a lot of people that are not thinking about that stuff. The ethics of it, the ethics of it are extremely sideways, are extremely fraught, I guess. It's an interesting, but like it is one of those interesting future problems of just like, yeah, it's really awesome that this technology exists. Also extremely effed up when you really think about it. But yeah, I don't know. I've just been whiling away some personal time messing around with that stuff, and it's been just fascinating. But whatever. This stuff's been going around for months. This isn't new. It's just the models are getting better. The ability to run it locally on all your hot CUDA cores, run it on this 3090, and I can generate an image every 30 or 45 seconds or so. And then I can, and also the local models don't have any safeguards in place to stop nudity, if you know what I mean. If you know what I mean. If you want to get a nude Tane, is what I'm saying, you can get that. I don't actually know what it'll generate when you do that, but it'll come up with something, I assume. The rudest and nudist of Tanes. This I typed in because it doesn't say up front, hey, this one has the kind of the nudity, the not safe for work filters disengaged. There was nothing on it that said engage or disengage. I was like, well, I guess show me John Cena nude then, and it generated one that had, I'm just going to come out and say it, 2 penises, which I think is funny because if we all think back to some of John Cena's most famous raps, his hip hop album, his hot hip hop release, it's really close because in one of those songs, he talked about how he fucked like a fiend with 3 dicks. The AI gave him 2. All I'm saying is, when will the AI know? The AI clearly needs to improve because it's only giving him 2 instead of the full 3. But I have hope that we will get there eventually, and we can truly render that stuff properly. It was a bad scene. It was a bad scene. Anyway, a lot of 9/11 stuff in there. You can generate a lot of shit. You can generate a lot of stuff. Okay. What's going on? Let's talk about some video games here. Let's talk about a little bit of video games, then we'll take an ad break and we'll come back and we'll talk about more video games. I didn't like put spots in there where the ads go. So now I'm looking at it and going like, okay, right, now we do this, then we'll throw an ad out there. We'll get our ad breaks out the way, and then we can really get into it. Splatoon 3 came out last week, and I have been playing a little bit of that. I have not gotten a ton of time with it yet. I'm like just like level 5 or 6 or something like that. I imported my save progress, so I got some golden tickets. So if you have Splatoon 2 progress, it will carry some of that over for your matchmaking rank, which was maybe a mistake in my part. But also it'll give you some tickets to get to unlock some higher level weapons early. And so I could not pass that up. So I got that, and I am getting worked bad at Splatoon 3. I don't remember being this bad at Splatoon 2. And maybe in some cases, I am often sometimes I am the first place person on my team, and we are still losing by like 20% or more. and but I am still sometimes the top person on the team, and that doesn't feel good. Sometimes I am the bottom person on my team, and that also feels bad. I don't know. It feels like a nation, a universe of players have gotten really good at the tilt controls, have gotten really good at splatooning, and meanwhile I have not. and so I guess that speaks to the popularity of the previous game, because the first game was on the Wii U. So, conventional wisdom says that no one played it. But a lot of people played Splatoon 2, and even more are going to play Splatoon 3 if the initial sales are any indication. So yeah, it's been brutal. I turned off the tilt controls. That's you can obviously disable it and use the right stick if you like. By default, it wants you to use the right stick to turn left and right, but then use the tilt to turn up and down. And I just don't find that works for me. It's the same problem I've had with this franchise from the beginning, which was if you are playing on a handheld, on the Wii U tablet or on the Switch or something like that, if you are tilting the screen that you are looking at, that sucks. That's a terrible feeling. You're like, wait, I'm not seeing as well anymore because I have tilted it away to, and it's just not a comfortable thing to do. So, that the tilting can be an intuitive. It can be something that can feel natural, but the part where the screen is also in your hands, I just think that kind of sucks. And so I have only played it undocked and handheld because I don't know why the Switch is not appearing on my television. I don't know. At some point, the wiring, at some point I must have rewired something, but I cannot play the Switch on my television at this time. I need to get behind there and run a bunch of cables, rerun a bunch of cables, and figure out what the heck happened there. But I feel like that's going to be the right way to play it. I feel like I want to see that game bigger. I want to see the enemy. The engagements with other players can be so hectic and messy with paint splashing and stuff, and the time to kill is so fast that I am just, sometimes I am not even picking. I'm barely even having time to see the enemy, and I'm already dead. And so I think on a bigger screen, I'm going to have a little bit better of a time just parsing the action, I guess, or parsing the action when it comes to encounters. You know what I mean? Because I'm trying a few different weapons. There's a lot of stuff about this game that, whatever. Splatoon 3 is another Splatoon game. At the end of the day, I think that's been the general consensus, and I think I agree with it so far, is that they have made another one of those, and they've put some new stuff in here and there, and of course, like, new levels is enough for a lot of shooters, right? You're just like, okay, cool. New maps, a couple of new guns, let's go. That's fine by me. Big Man is representing as well. They have streamlined some of the menus and some of the interface stuff, but like, there's still, this is a pretty specific thing that I wish was better about Splatoon 3. When you go to the weapon shop, you can test out any weapon, even if you don't have the ability to unlock it at a given time. You can take it into a little test stage and run around with it and shoot it, at stationary targets, and you can try out the different abilities and all of that sort of stuff. It's great. It's vital, because even though the weapons are broken up into different classes, the splat dualies, which is just dual SMG style things, there's a higher level version that says it's like GUI dualies. I don't remember the exact name. A higher level of dualie that has a much lower rate of fire. That doesn't necessarily seem bad. It seems like it's probably doing more damage. Anyway, the thing I want to be able to do is really quickly swap between these weapons and test them out for feel. Go from splat dualies to these other dualies to trying out. But every time you want to, like, you load into the training area, it's relatively quick. But then when you come out of the training area, which you have to do if you want to change weapons, it goes back to a loading screen. And then it gives you, it loads back into the whole store interface, and then you have to go pick another weapon, and then, hey, I want to test this weapon out, and then it says, like, do you want to test this weapon out? I was like, yeah, motherfucker, I want to test this weapon out. Then it goes and it loads back into the training area, so you can run around and shoot. Like, that just needs to be instant. I feel like if that was just like At any point, let me hit start, and it just shows a list of weapons, and I can pick one of them and change on the fly right there in the training area to be able to just like very quickly compare numbers, because when you do shoot the targets in the training area, you'll see damage numbers pop off of them, so you can kind of get a sense of what you're doing. People are saying that you can't. Okay, all right. Well, maybe I need to dig a little deeper, because if you can do that, then now I'm even more angry. Okay, good, because I've been bopping out the. God damn, where the fuck is my Switch? Oh. Okay, if you can do that in the weapon training area, then that is, then that's my main fucking complaint. Is that process takes too long to get in and out. So it does that. When I say that a lot of the navigation is improved across other parts of the game, like they are really good about, and Splatoon 2 had some of this where it is opening up and saying like, hey, you can just warp to any of these given areas around the map and warp to these different stores and all this other stuff. Checking if the software can be played. I'm going to launch this because I want to know. We're going to find out live. If people are effing around with me, yeah, you're probably right. But I feel like every time I hit the button, it just said like, do you want to clean up or do you want to leave? And you can clean, so you can like clean the paint off of the arena or whatever and do that stuff. I don't know. It's good. Splatoon is good. They've got one of the. I wish that it had. Basically each weapon also comes with 2 abilities, and so it's like one is kind of a grenade type ability, and then one is like sort of your super. And I chose the higher level dualies because the special on that is basically a spirit bomb. Like you kind of, well, you're already in the air, but like you have to jump up in the air. You hit the button, you will kind of jump up in the air, and a small paint ball will appear around your hand. And then you have to mash down on the D-pad to say booyah over and over again. And once you've booyah'd enough times, the ball gets big enough and you fling it across the map, and it's this big old spirit bomb looking paint explosion. I have had 0 effectiveness with it, but just the act of like, I've got to fucking smash this booyah button in order to get this super off is so cool. Oh, teammates have to booyah as well in that one. So yeah, I don't know. I have not seen any teammates booyahing or not. I felt like I was always doing all of the booyahing. Well, I can't skip. Okay, now I got to skip the part where they come on and they say what the maps are. This is the map thing. It doesn't cut to this like television screen as much anymore. Like I feel like in 2, didn't it just kind of like every hour it would reload the scene? Okay, we can skip out of the splash cast. All right, so we're gonna hit the menu. We're gonna go to the weapon shop. We're gonna see if this is going on. Anyway, I've had no luck with that booyah bomb doing anything, but it is such a cool concept that I had to unlock that gun early. I had to get it. And so that's been pretty cool. But now I'm like, maybe I need the paintbrush, because the paintbrush comes with a freaking grappling hook, and I wish you could just use the grappling hook all the time, or a lot more frequently than you can, because it is like the booyah bomb into something you have to charge up and earn, as opposed to being more of like a class ability or some kind of, like constantly there sort of thing. And you can probably do the grappling hook a little more frequently than the other thing, if I had to guess, but there is literally like how many points does it take to earn your special? So, and that's different per gun. Okay, I'm gonna go. Wait, I'm gonna hit this. Wait, no, I accidentally backed out of the weapon store. God. Okay, wait, no, then this is going great. We'll load back into the weapon shop. So yeah, those abilities are really awesome and really fun to just mess around with. The grappling hook is weird because you pop it like a super, right? And when you do it, you have access to the grappling hook for a period of time. And when that period of time expires, it actually like super jumps you back to where you were when you activated it. So it's almost like this in and out sort of thing of like, you can work your way deep into enemy territory and get up to some business, and then it will like pull you out. And so you have to kind of like make the most of your time. when you do get there. Okay, we're going to hit the test button. We're going to go into test. But it pulls you out before you can, because it's if you just warped to their back line, it might be a little overpowered. Okay, I'm shooting. Okay, yeah, there is okay. Wait, change gear. Okay. Yep. Oh, and okay. Yep. That's much faster. Okay, good. All right, I have no complaints. Splatoon 3, hell of a game. You should get it. It's great. And you can even change because your clothing will have abilities on it as well, so you can kind of test out your full loadout. That's good. Okay, good. That's because I was trying to, and I played most of my time with this game was playing in bed last night, half asleep, and just the process. Okay, I'm gonna actually turn this off and not just sit here and play Splatoon 3 without you being able to see it. Yeah, it was a case of like some of this navigation is better and some of it should be better still. I think is probably how I feel about the menus overall. Because it's just clunky enough. It's just in world enough, and that's cool because it gives it a great vibe, right? They go so far out of their way to establish the lobby as a real place and as the town square as a real and meaningful place, and you can see other players and their silly drawings and all that sort of stuff, and that's great. Because it just makes it feel, because think about other most shooters. It's just here, create class, start matching, all that other stuff. Though, I kind of wish it had that. Because sometimes you just want to get into a game as soon as possible, and it's still a little bit of like, okay, I've got to teleport to this area, and then once I'm there, I can bring up a fast menu to start matching and do the, and there's a little stuff like that still could be a little bit faster, but that's good that you can. Okay, that's now I can actually go and check out a weapon, because the big problem I was having was like without finding that quick switch thing, which is literally on the screen. I feel like a fucking moron. Just the ability of like figuring out like what gun is the gun for me. Because the stats on the screen where you're buying them isn't like, they aren't that, the stats screen is not that useful. And so you really need to get in there and try everything out. And I was just finding like, just because you look at the name of the weapons, you go like, okay, well, I know what class of weapon this is and all this other stuff. And it's like, this stuff could be a little bit cleaner. That said, I love Splatoon up to a point, and this will be interesting because like I was saying, Splatoon 2 did a lot better than the first game. So you have a lot of people that has been spending a lot of time getting really, really good at Splatoon, while I have not been. And so I wonder if this will be the case where it's like, okay, people are really good at Splatoon now, and you're just going to eat shit forever. And I'm like, okay, well, shit, maybe Splatoon is no longer for me or whatever. But it is pretty rad. I know there's some other stuff in there, some co-op and some single player stuff, and I don't know. I'll check it out. The single player stuff they've done in the past, and even the co-op stuff they did with the last game, I never really got that into it. So I don't know. I always like the idea of buying new clothes and then unlocking additional stats on the clothes and all of that sort of stuff. It has always been a really cool concept when they rolled that out. So yeah, I don't know. I'll spend some more time with it, which is like, this is the first, I'm trying to think what was the last Switch game I even came close to getting into. It's been a really long time. This was the first time I had to find my Switch and it wouldn't even power on. And I plugged it in and it wouldn't even power on. And I was like, shit, did I brick my Switch? Did this thing somehow break? The heck is going on? And I just had to charge it for a while. And I mean, it still had, like, it said it had 100% battery charge when I finally did get it to boot up. So it wasn't even dead. I don't know. It was weird. But, and that's how long it's been since, I guess, Metroid Dread came out. So, but this was also the first time I held my Switch for any length of time since the Steam Deck came out. And the Switch feels tiny now. The Switch feels minuscule. It's like it feels like a silly toy in my hands. It feels like it's a toy for goofballs. And I have really come over the last, let's say, 12 hours. I have come to really hate the way the Joy-Cons are, whether they are docked to the side of the Switch or whether they are like the feel of the Joy-Cons. I can't stand them. They're terrible. And the Steam Deck has only made that worse. So, yeah, I guess watch out for that. I don't know. Anyway, Splatoon 3's it seems like a hell of a game. I really want to play more of it. If I can, well, I need to rewire stuff because I obviously need to spit it out to a TV, and that's not working for whatever reason. And then from there, I guess I would like to try to find my Pro controller, wherever the heck that thing went, which I also am not a fan of. I could not find it when I went looking for it last night. But I did find this stupid thing, the weird dock for the Joy-Cons. And so if all else fails, I'll just put the Joy-Cons on this thing and play it that way. Switch, huh? What's up with that? What's up with the Switch? Am I right? What's up with this Switch? You heard of this? Anyway, we will talk a lot more about the future of the Switch a little bit later in the show. But first, why don't we take an ad break and we'll come back, and then I have a lot more complaining to do about Cyberpunk 2077 apparently. All right, we'll be back in a moment. I keep buying books and then not reading them. That's how it's been. I guess probably since my daughter was born a few years ago. Time is at a premium these days. We've all got a billion things going on. And so it's been nice to experiment and check out the catalog over at Blinkist. Now, what is Blinkist, you ask? I'm glad you asked, because I'm here to tell you. Blinkist is a catalog of over 5,500 nonfiction books and podcasts that you can ingest in like 15 minutes per book. What they do is they take these books, business books, communication books, all these other kind of self-help, like all this sort of stuff across the board, and they condense these perspectives down into smaller, more bite-sized forms that you can either read or you can listen to. And so that's nice if you're kind of, out on a walk, where you walking, you taking kids out on a walk, taking a dog out on a walk, you got a short commute, something like that. You can just listen to these and try to ingest the knowledge of, the kind of the Marie Kondo decluttering craze from a few years ago that I always meant to read but never got around to reading. And now I'm like, oh, I can listen to this, and then maybe I can go out in the garage and throw all this stuff away, burn it all. I imagine that's probably the lesson number 5. Lesson number 5: burn it all. No, that's probably not it. But you can get into these exciting conversations and kind of experience these moments from these books, discover these new perspective that you can get, out of these whole books. Reggie Fils-Aimé's book is on there. I'm going to give that a listen and see what that guy has to say for himself. You know what I mean? You can get through a ton of different stuff this way. Blake Harris's Console Wars is on there. That's a book I've already read, but I might go back and reacquaint myself with the points of it to see if it's any different from the version that kind of got made into a documentary there. So, a ton of like books on management and leadership and all of that sort of stuff, but also just like basic communication and just a lot of different, a wide swath of, again, nonfiction, broken down into easily digestible points. And, you can use this a few different ways. There are some cases where I'm going to listen to some of these and go like, okay, now this this is worth me going and reading the entire book. And then some of the other ones, maybe the Blink, maybe the 15-minute version of this is the right way to go. Blinkist has a new feature now as well. If you do sign up for a premium account, you can actually share it with one other person via Blinkist Connect. And how this works is basically you can share your account with another person. That doesn't mean you're sharing the books that you've selected, all this other stuff. That stuff stays private. If you're, I don't know. Hey, I don't know what you're blinking over there. And neither will the person that you're sharing your account with. They'll have their own separate stuff. You can decide to share if you want individual books, but you can keep some of that private for yourself. All of that sort of stuff. So if you want to, find things out together with another person, your wife, your spouse, whatever you got going on, you can do that, or share with another person and keep that, and keep your blinks to yourself. You know what I mean? There's a whole wide variety of stuff here. I clicking through when I first got the account, there was just like 6 or 7 things right off the bat that I was like, oh, I should check this out. The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. And by F, I mean fuck. That's the name of the book. What are you going to do? That's the name of the book. A counterintuitive approach to living a good life. That sounds like something that I might be interested in. Living a good life. And now you can lead a good life with Blinkist. Right now, Blinkist has a special offer just for you. Go to Blinkist.com/JEFFG to start your 7-day free trial and get 25% off a Blinkist premium membership. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist, Blinkist.com/JEFFG to get 25% off and a 7-day free trial. Blinkist.com/JEFFG. And now for a limited time, you can even use Blinkist Connect to share your premium account. You will get 2 premium subscriptions for the price of 1. Wow. All right, we're back. Hello. All right, we're back. Wow. That was weird. My voice, I got new headphones, and my voice sounds different in them, and it's really messing with me. These are more like studio monitor headphones, very neutral sound, which is nice. Though sometimes I want more bass. Sometimes I want that Miami bass sound. I want that shit to be hitting, hitting hard. Also hard hitting, the 1.6 patch for Cyberpunk 2077, which came out. You remember they announced, hey, we're putting out DLC. It's going to be our only DLC. Also, we're putting out a patch. And so they put out this patch that added cross-platform saves to Cyberpunk. And this is an awkward integration, I'm going to say. So what they've done is when you open up the console version of the game, it'll give you a QR code, and you can scan that and then log into your GOG account. And then once you're logged into your GOG account on multiple platforms, it will automatically upload, I guess, like your latest manual save and your latest cloud save. So I think there's like a maximum of 3 saves it will push up to be used in a multi-platform setting. And so I had about 50 hours of playtime on the PC version of the game back from playing it when it first came out. And I was like, I wonder if I do this, if it will give me all the trophies on the PlayStation version of the game. And so I went and jumped through all the hoops to get the saves to transfer over and show up on the PlayStation version of the game, loaded in, and then ended up playing about another 5 hours of Cyberpunk, which was a mistake. I will say the PlayStation 5 version of the game runs quite well, compared for a game that I think at times does not run very well at all anywhere. It runs about as well there as it does on a high-end PC at different resolutions and all that sort of stuff. It uses the triggers, it uses the speaker, it's like they really, it's almost like Sony got really pissed off at them, and then they felt like they had to support every single feature of the PlayStation 5 to try to make good. So it's got trophy hints in there. It's got the activity cards, every single PS5 feature it could possibly fucking have. They checked off the box, so I guess good on them. And it's broken. That game's fucking broken still. Oh man. So some of this is the sync on the cloud saves is pretty touchy. I had to log in on the PlayStation like 3 separate times because every time I turned it on, like it was just the saves were not there and the sync had broken and stuff. So I had to go and shoot the QR code again and log back in on my phone and all this other stuff. And, you know, it all got there. Let's see what else. Also, the first time I got done playing the PlayStation version, I wanted to just see that cloud save transfer back over to the PC. So I went back to GOG, opened that up, went to go look at my saves, and the only save that was there in the cloud just said corrupt save. And I could not load it. I was like, that's awesome. I'm having a great time over here. I went back to the PlayStation. That save was still there and still worked. And then the next time I saved it, it transferred over fine. But I guess be careful. If you are going to be careful for a few reasons. This was one of them. But let's see. What else? I got stuck on a motorcycle and couldn't get off. The button to get off the motorcycle just didn't work. This is mind you, this is from me playing about 5 hours of the game, doing mostly side stuff and like the scanner, like the bottom barrel side quests, because that's the stuff I didn't touch at all, or did not touch much of in some parts of town. So it was kind of the only thing I had left. So I loaded in and freaking drove around the city, just like, you know, at this point, having an end game character, like you get the ability to cast a spell, a cyberspace spell called Contagion. And basically it's a damage over time that attacks an enemy, and also when they get hit with it, enemies around them also get it. And so it kind of spreads across a population of enemies and kills them all, because it does so much damage. It kills almost any enemy eventually. It'll just take a little time for it to happen because it's a damage over time. And so basically all I really had to do was just walk up to areas full of guys, cast that on one of them, and then stand back and duck, and then they all die. And then for the police ones, you have to run in and collect some evidence, or it's just like walk over there, hit a button, and it says job done. I'm like, okay, load up the minimap, do another one. And so I knocked out 2 whole areas of those. For some reason, I did not pick an area that has a trophy attached to it. There's trophies for like, do everything in this area. I chose the north end of town because that's where I was, and apparently that area of town doesn't have a trophy. So I was like, damn it. I did go on one quest. One of the side gigs, side jobs, had me going into a nightclub and basically killing someone and bringing their body out to a car. And there's an optional objective in this quest for not entering combat while you're in the club. And I was like, okay, well, let's do that, because I might as well try to have some fun here while I'm doing this, because Jesus, none of this is a particularly good time. And so outside of the club is a spot where you can deposit your guns. Like there's a guy at the door that says like, you can't bring your guns in here, samurai, cyber cowboy. You got a punch deck. Woo! Dixie Flatline. And then you walk outside and hit a button, and your entire inventory of weapons, goes into a thing. And then you can hit a button to get it all back. And so I put all my weapons in the thing, and then I walked through this nightclub, again, casting Contagion on every enemy I saw, including the enemy that I didn't even see the guy I needed to get, because I hit him with that thing and he fell over. When I was downstairs, and I killed him from downstairs. And then I walked up, got his body, figured out where it needed to go, dumped it in the trunk of a car. On my way out, I was like, oh, I need to make sure I get my guns. I need to get my guns. I shouldn't forget my guns. And so on my way out, holding this guy's body, I recollected all my guns. So I got all my inventory back. No one was left alive to say, hey, what are you doing with this body or whatever? So I'm like, well, fuck it. I'll get my guns back. Got my guns back. Walked out to the car, dumped the body in the car. And then it pops up a quest objective that says, go get your guns back. And I'm like, well, okay, I've got my guns already, but okay, I probably just need to go hit the button on this and I can deposit them and pull them right back out like I've done a couple of times before. So I go back into the club to where the gun deposit is, and I hit the button that says deposit guns. And as soon as I do that, it checks off the objective for the quest and then deactivates the terminal because I'm no longer in that quest. So I no longer have a need to ever use that thing. And so it deleted all of my weapons. Every weapon I had, gone. Quest complete. Now, obviously, you know, at this point, you've got 20 fucking saves you could go back to get your guns back. But the thing I realized is, fuck, I don't care about any of these guns. They're useless. But still, this game's been out for what, 2 years? How many patches have they? Well, I mean, they're 1.6, so maybe not that many. The very idea that we are this many years into this game that was broken, and it is still broken in ways like this, blew my mind. And so yeah, the Johnny, the Keanu Reeves gun that does a weird fire thing when you do the melee, gone. History. Smoked. And I just kept playing because I just didn't care at that point. I was like, you know what? I cast this spell and everyone dies and they will all drop guns. So if I ever need to use a gun, fine, whatever. I'll just pick up another gun. Who fucking cares? That's the game they've made. The game where it's like, oh yeah, look at all these awesome guns that I got and I custom crafted and upgraded and put mods. Who fucking cares? Just cast the spell, everybody dies. Keep going. What a waste. What a waste of a game. You know? Like, after all these years, all this stuff, like, that's still a problem. So, then I get to the point where it's like, okay, I have not gotten any trophies on the PlayStation 5 version of the game. None of the old ones I got on PC, the old achievements, none of that stuff rang up at all. I'm like, well, I guess I'll finish the game and maybe see if maybe they did anything there to make that any better. And so I went through the end game, and it takes forever. You go and you shoot at him, smash her a bunch. And at this point, just like, you're so powerful. I'm like level 40 or something. And I'm just like, all right, well, I could just punch him with my damn gorilla arms. I don't even need a gun. And so I finished the game again. Still felt that the character choices, or the way they write the characters at the end of that game, and when you have to make decisions about let's call it like a who lives and who dies kind of decision, I guess. But the way that the characters are written versus how the characters handle themselves when dealing with this topic through the entire game don't match up very well at all. And I still feel that way. The ending is still bad. I still feel like the ending is really terrible. So I finished the game. And when you finish the game, it rolls credits and it does all the things it does and gives you the fallout and the style of just like, here's this character talking to you about what you did and blah, blah, blah. Here, whatever. And then it says, hey, do you want to play more? Which, like, fucking of course not. But also it's like, we can teleport you back to your last save before, here we'll start you right before the point of no return, and you can go out there and do all the side stuff you didn't do. And so I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. Load back in, which then generates a whole new set of auto saves and a lot of other stuff like that, which again, for this cloud save, that's going to push those versions up to the cloud because it's the most recent saves. Loaded back into the world. And it had somehow stuck me in a non-combat. It was like I was in a store, or it was like I was in a story cutscene or something. My life bar vanished. I could not jump. I could not arm a weapon. I could not, no punching, no shooting, no move, could not talk to characters, could not get into vehicles. I could fast travel, but that didn't fix the problem. I couldn't even jump up the frickin' curb. And that's been a bug that, you know, when I started looking it up, that's been in there forever. And that just happened to me upon finishing the game. And I did it. It happened to me twice because it generated autosaves that were along the path near the end of the game. And so I went through and rolled credits again to see if, like, you know, it would magically do the same thing again. It did. So this is on the PlayStation 5 version of the game. And then I was like, well, I guess I've completely fucked all my saves because now those are the cloud saves. So I went and loaded it up on PC because at this point I'm trying to unfuck it, right? I'm like, well, can I do anything to like make this work again? And there are people who are like, oh, all I had to do was pull the left trigger to aim down sight. That didn't work. Then, like, nothing that I saw people saying they used to get out of this situation was working for me. So I thought, well, it's cloud save, so maybe if I reload it on PC, that will magically snap it out of it. And no, I loaded up the save on PC and it was completely broken there too. And so my cloud saves, all of my cloud saves were in this completely broken state of not being able to do anything, to interact with the world. Even on the map, if you go into the map, all of the side quests that I still had remaining were just missing. They didn't even show up on the map. Like, it was just like gone. It was like, here's this empty world. It's like, hey, you want to go do one more side quest? I'm like, sure. Like, oh, sorry, we've erased all the side quests from the game and you can't act or jump or do anything. I'm like, cool. Awesome work, everyone. You're really fucking knocking it out of the park. Almost 2 years, right? That was like late 2020 that game came out, right? Whew. I was just stuck in this kind of constant state of disbelief playing that game again, and just noticing just how broken it still was. And even in 5 hours, and I'll grant you, maybe this is like, hey, because my save was from the launch of the game, maybe some stuff broke 2 years ago that was nasty in my save file, and that, you know, maybe that caused some. Maybe if I started a new save, none of this stuff would ever happen. I'm never gonna do that. That's crazy. I cannot believe how many things, big and small, I encountered in this game just from playing it for another 5 hours. After all of these patches, after all of this stuff, it's crazy. And then on top of that, I think that all the dialogue is terrible. Like, it's like they wanted to write it in this very fast-paced, casual way, and then everyone reading their lines read them all very slowly and deliberately. And so there's a lot of cases where they leave the pronoun out. Like, they don't say, I wanted to do this. And so you have Keanu Reeves saying two sentences, and the second one starts with, wanted to do this, instead of I wanted to do, and it just sounds like no one speaks. It sounds like it comes off as a weird, it just comes off as completely inhuman. It comes off as like, who wrote this and why did they let the voice actors read this way to begin with? Like, why did no one step in and be like, these people sound like fucking idiots? How come all the characters in this game sound like total dumbasses? And I found myself going like, is this like part of the Cyberpunk fiction? Is this, if I go back to the original rule books, did they make some decision back then that, like, in addition to saying, let's Delta when you need to leave somewhere, they also were just like, let's find this weird, stunted, stilted, broken way to talk? I don't know. I just like, that part blew me away all over again, because that was something that was in the original game. Obviously, they didn't go change the writing and dialogue and stuff like that. But the way Cyberpunk is written, the moment-to-moment dialogue, the lines of dialogue, particularly out of Keanu Reeves, who is like he is a fairly interesting character in the context of that world, is insofar as any part of it is interesting. Like, the nature of the main quest at least has potential. They blow it at the end, but the way that dialogue is performed, it feels like it is performed the way it is written, and the way it is written is bad. And like, no one thought to step in and be like, hey, I don't know how you're going to use this in the final product. And maybe they recorded it one line at a time and all this other stuff. Who knows? But gosh, I just cannot I can't get over it. I'm really, it was like, I forgot a lot about that game. But it's like if instead of he said like, you know, instead of like, wake up samurai, we've got a city to burn, it was like, wake up samurai, beat, got a city to burn. And it just sounds fucking terrible. And so stilted and broken, and it takes you out of the moment constantly with that stuff. And I had forgotten all about that part. That part still sucks. I'm just whatever. You know, I don't want to sit here and like relitigate all of Cyberpunk because we could be here all day. So really just the new stuff is, hey, they rolled out these cloud saves. Hey, in my experience with those cloud saves and playing a bunch of that game on PlayStation 5 or you know, playing another 5 hours of it and seeing the credits roll a couple more times and all that sort of stuff, that game is still way too broken. There was a part of me that was just like, oh, I'm sure that game's fine now after 2 years of working on it and the scrutiny they faced and all that stuff. You know, it's not great because the storyline of that game never resolved well. So that's not something they're going to fix. But, you know, at least it probably will play okay and perform well and this sort of stuff. But like, Jesus, what a mess. Still, after all this time, what a mess. And so the idea that they're going to go like build some DLC for it, it's like, what? No. There's no part of me that wants to like, here's new stories that you can inject into the middle of your time with V and Johnny Silverhand. Like, no. That story sucks. Most of the side stories in that game, not great. A couple moments here and there where you're like, But geez, what just a colossal series of missteps. It's really, you know, it's easy to forget, you know, because like games get patched and more games come out all the time, and you know, like who the hell is thinking about Cyberpunk in this day and age? I mean, they sold a lot of copies of it, so presumably. And also, when I finished on PlayStation 5, the achievements, the trophies you get for finishing the game, only 13%, I believe, only 13% of players had finished the main storyline in that game. And I'm not sure what that says for a game that sold that many copies. You know, did people just bounce off it? Did people get way into it and not finish it? Did people find it broken and think like, well, I'll come back to this later? Because it's not a difficult game. It's a very finishable game, and is extremely easy in my experience to over level for the content, and really just murder everyone with a touch of a button, which has its moments where you're just like, look at that, I cast this one spell and everybody died. Like, combat is no longer even a part of that game for me, you know, because I can just tap that button and everyone falls over. And then in the event that combat does break out, like, I've got 5 other spells I can cast, or I can just shoot everybody once. Like, the weapons get so powerful near the end of that game that you're just like mowing people down for nothing. And yeah, I was just flabbergasted going back to it and seeing the number and the style of issues I encountered in my time revisiting the game. So it's easy to think like, oh, it's been all these years and surely they've patched it all out by now. But I was shocked at just how many different things I ran into. It's every gun out of my inventory, poof, gone. Gone. Fucking really? I can't. It's unbelievable. It is unbelievable. It's a good thing that game's got manual saves. So, but I guess so. That's my point. Hey, if you're finding yourself drawn back into Cyberpunk because of all this cross-platform stuff, be careful. It does still let you keep as many saves as you want locally. It only pushes the recent ones up to the cloud, so you'll still have local backups of your saves on whatever platform you play it on. And just keep that in mind. You can make as many manual saves as you want because you just might need them. What a mess. The other game I played is called Shatterline. I haven't spent too much time with this. It's a free-to-play game with a kind of Call of Duty / crisis-y kind of sci-fi-ish sort of vibe. It is the characters have specific abilities and weapons and stuff like that, so you're kind of going into a team deathmatch situation, but you've got a specific ult that will pull out, like, oh, now I have a grenade launcher, now I have this, now I have that. Played a few rounds of that on someone's recommendation. I forget who it was. Someone in chat mentioned it last week. And it kind of looks nice, but it doesn't, and it plays okay. I want to spend some more time with it. Maybe I'll stream a little bit of it. But that's out there and that's free to play. It's on Steam. So, you can also give that a look for yourself if that sounds at all interesting. At this point, like the idea of a game that's going to kind of fill a Call of Duty sized hole. It's maybe a little late in the year for that because, actual Call of Duty is just around the corner. I was just thinking the other day, it's actually pretty smart. One of the things they're doing for Call of Duty pre-orders is saying, hey, if you pre-order the game, we'll let you play the campaign a week early, which for a franchise where people don't play the campaign, in some ways, the idea of we will give you the campaign a week early is kind of genius because it's like, hey, you can't play the multiplayer yet. Maybe you'll check out the campaign for once. It's actually kind of, I don't know. It's actually kind of smart. We'll see. I don't know. I when I was testing out these headphones and seeing how they work with music and games and all this other stuff, I was like, Call of Duty generally sounds okay, and went and loaded into a match of Vanguard. It's easy to forget the name of that game, and ran around as Snoop Dogg and shot a bunch of people. And I was like, yeah, that's still that. I don't know. This next Call of Duty is going to have to do some pretty magical shit, I think, to bring people back on board. But I said that before that last Modern Warfare reboot, and they actually did it. So we'll see what we end up with. But I don't know. It's to me the recent quality of Call of Duty. We'll get into it in the news on the other end of this next break here. But Sony being out there trying to cause problems for Microsoft's acquisition of Activision by saying oh, Call of Duty is so important and what they're offering is not adequate and all this other stuff. When you look at the recent quality of Call of Duty and the number of other competitive shooters on the market, be they battle royale games or what have you, it's just Sony's argument just continues to seem very ridiculous to me. Anyway, why don't we take our final ad break of the show? And then we will come back and we will get into the news. Here in the dog days of summer, sometimes it's nice to sit back and relax and enjoy an alcoholic beverage or two, or hey, three, perhaps even four, if you so desire. But if you're not bouncing back from your nights of alcohol the way you used to, and sometimes that just makes you not want to engage with any of that stuff at all. Well, hey, there's something you can try now that can help. It's from Zbiotics. Zbiotics has this pre-alcohol probiotic, and it's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking, and here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. And it's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Zbiotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down, and it's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut where you need it most. Bam! And you're feeling better. Spring in your step. Here's all you got to do. Remember to drink Zbiotics before drinking alcohol. Drink responsibly, get a good night's sleep, and you can feel your best tomorrow. Yeah, that's right. So yeah, if you're like, hey, it's a little late to get started. It's September, but we can still have a White Claw summer. Zbiotics can maybe, hopefully, take some of the sting out of those following mornings. Give Zbiotics a try for yourself. Go to zbiotics.com/Jeff to get 15% off your first order when you use the code Jeff at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money. No questions asked. We had some folks in the community. I saw in the community some people trying out some Zbiotics and saying, "Hey, this worked for me." And that's awesome. You love to see it. And hey, Halloween is right around the corner, so you can order a pack of Zbiotics for you and your friends today. Make sure you get it in time for candy and cocktails, whatever you're getting into. Reese's peanut butter cups and Boone's Farm. Is that a pairing? It is now. If you're truly about that life, it is now. And Zbiotics can help you spring back the next day. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/Jeff and use the code Jeff at checkout for 15% off. And thanks to Zbiotics for sponsoring the episode. We're back, and now let's get into the news. Nintendo loves to farm. That's it for the news. Nintendo Direct happened this morning. 40 minutes of games coming out roughly in the winter time. A lot of people developed very unhealthy expectations for what was going to be in this broadcast compared to what was actually in this broadcast. I'm going to say probably the biggest pure announcement, new reveal, is Pikmin 4 here. They didn't have much to show on it other than to say, hey, we're making Pikmin 4. And it's coming out next year, and showed a little image of it, and it looks like you maybe have a viewpoint a little bit closer to the ground. Whole lot of third-party stuff here, which is, not necessarily a bad thing. But when you have, every time one of these things gets announced, you get a bunch of people coming out of the woodwork going, oh, this game's going to be there. This game has to be there. This is going to, and, expectations get wild. When instead they had, I'm looking, Fanbyte has a pretty good recap of everything that was announced there, but at the same time, I think even they were smart enough to leave out some of the, okay, so what do we have here? We have Fae Farm from Phoenix Labs, which is a game that's about that farm life with some action combat in it. Story of Seasons, A Wonderful Life. Let's see, I'm just scrolling through the list here looking for this stuff. Rune Factory. They showed Rune Factory 3 Special. They also said a new Rune Factory series is in development. I assume that means like sub-series. I don't actually know what that... They say series. I assume that means something more than yet another Rune Factory. Was Various Daylife a farming... I don't know. Factorio was there, which is not about farming, but, you're building stuff. Yeah, I think this is... Oh, Harvestella. That's another one. With some farming. It felt like every 5 minutes they had another game involving a farming mechanic in it, which, farming in games pretty popular. I don't know. Or managing your space, managing your land, all that sort of stuff, whatever you want to call it. It's more than just farming, I suppose. Like Animal Crossing isn't necessarily a farming game, but it's kind of in the lane that we're talking about here. But between the sales success of Animal Crossing and the lingering after effects of Stardew Valley and stuff like that, it really felt like this was like 50% farm games. I came out of this. I live streamed this for an hour or so, and then went out, and my wife asked me how'd it go. What'd they have? I said, oh, well, you might like it. They had like 9,000 different farming games. She's like, I'm done with farming games. Like, she's been playing the most recent Rune Factory that came out on Switch, and she's like, I'm sick of this shit. So, I don't know if the key farming audience is even there for that much farming or not anymore. let's see. Yeah, so they brought out Miyamoto, and he talked about very briefly about the Mario movie, and then spent a good long time. Well, and also about the Super Mario World theme park. And then spent a long time talking about Pikmin Bloom, the mobile game that came out a while ago with Niantic. It's like a location-based thing, sort of like Pokemon Go, but without any of the fun or engaging activities of Pokemon Go. It's like if they took anything you liked about Pokemon Go and said, we're going to rip that out and you can still walk around. There are Pikmin. Sometimes they'll visit places you've been before. I had Pikmin Bloom installed for a couple of months. And, you know, I was going out on walks, walking the kids, taking the kids out and stroller walks and just going play, you know, whatever. And it was just the most bone dry, uninteresting experience imaginable. I'm really a sucker for as much as it's a privacy problem. I'm a sucker for the idea of this kind of like location-based GPS style stuff. All the way back to that Crackdown game they put out on Windows Phone. Remember that? Of course you don't remember that. I have achievements in that game. God damn it. So I don't know. I'm kind of a sucker for trying a lot of those sorts of things. So I tried Pikmin Bloom for a while. I think it is a dismal failure when it comes to trying to find something exciting. And also the way it leverages Pikmin is not all that interesting either. Anyway, long story short, at the end of that, Miyamoto said like, anyway, Pikmin 4 is coming out. We're not going to show any of it here, but hey, here's a screenshot. It's coming out next year. And so it was like this really, it's like a relatively underwhelming appearance from Miyamoto-san there. And just like, all right, I guess you got to bring the dude out, but like, he's got to bring the heat. That's a name and a face that you want to attach to heat, baby. Like when he appears on screen, you want to go like, oh shit, here we go. And then he's like, yeah, that mobile game, pretty cool, huh? Anyway, we're going to do Pikmin 4. Not going to show it, but we're doing it. Here's a little tease. I'll see you later. Peace. And so, yeah, I don't know. That felt, a lot of this thing felt very off kilter, I think, depending on your expectations going into it. They're also going to remake Kirby's Return to Dreamland, which was a Wii game, as Return to Dreamland Deluxe. Sure. Fire Emblem Engage was formally announced. That game leaked out a while ago. They put a name on the Zelda sequel, but like it showed, like they've shown more of it in previous directs and other things. Like it was just like, here's a very, very, very brief, like it's sort of like the Pikmin tease in a sense. But here's a very, very tiny look at Link doing a thing on a hovering bird ship thing. That for a second there, I was like, oh no, why is this game serving so much Skyward Sword? And it was, I did not feel good about that. And then they put the name on it, Tears of the Kingdom, and then gave it a date. It's coming out next May. So that's hot information. Hey, Zelda's got a date. Great. They mentioned Bayonetta 3, reaffirmed it was coming out in October, and then said, hey, yeah, Bayonetta 3. This time she's fighting to save the world. We've got a gameplay trailer that you can go find somewhere else. And I guess it's a 7-minute trailer, which is, you know, like longer than average. But when I look at the quality of the rest of this show and how much people have wanted more Bayonetta stuff, the idea that small rewarder on the Discord is saying it's age restricted on YouTube. So maybe that's the reason, is because it's M-rated and they didn't want to get into that territory in the direct. Maybe that makes way more sense. But at the same time, to have this long ass Nintendo Direct full of a bunch of stuff that I'm just like, fucking, what are we doing? To then get to Bayonetta and be like, yeah, we're not going to, we have it, but we're not going to show it to you here. Like, what are you doing? It's just ridiculous. Yeah, I don't know. The whole thing was ridiculous. Radiant Silvergun is out today on Switch. That's cool. Unless you're a Saturn collector who's been hoarding copies of that game for years and years. It probably won't actually affect the value of those copies of the game. I think we're past that point now. But Radiant Silvergun was a cool shooter for the Saturn, and it's out now on Switch. That's kind of cool. They showed some of that Fatal Frame remaster. It Takes Two is coming to the Switch. They got a SpongeBob platformer. Tunic is coming to the Switch. They showed the Front Mission remakes for 1 and 2 and then said, and a third game is also coming. The first Front Mission remake will hit in November. Front Mission 2 will come out next year. That's cool. They put hashtags at the end of every little presentation. And for that, it just said, hashtag Wanzers are back. And then they pronounced it Vonzers, which, I mean, yeah, that's okay, fine. I just like saying Wanzer. I like saying hashtag Wanzers are back. Octopath Traveler 2. Looking good. A new Theatrhythm Final Bar line. It is going to have hundreds of songs in it. It'll have some paid DLC that'll include games from the Saga series, Nier, Live Alive, and more. That game will also come to the PlayStation, according to Fanbyte. And so I think if you are all in on all their DLC, that game's going to have like 500 frickin' songs in it, which is crazy, but awesome. What else? I'm like looking over this list of everything they showed, and new tracks coming to Mario Kart, which you know that they're in the middle of their big DLC thing. Pauline is coming to Mario Strikers, and more N64 games of, let's say, varied quality. Some of the worst N64 games, and some that people think of as the best. They're going to put Mario Party games out on the Nintendo 64 online service. So you can play Mario Party 2 on the internet if you want to. It's disgusting. Pilot Wing 64, 1080 snowboarding, a couple of Pokemon Stadium games, and a game called GoldenEye. GoldenEye 007. Which I don't know. It's the 7th one. I don't know. Is it GoldenEye 7? Is it like a Leonard Part 6 kind of situation? I don't know. This is a boy. I get why people would be excited about GoldenEye coming out, but this is maybe the most underwhelming way this could have happened. Okay, so GoldenEye is coming to the Nintendo Switch N64 service. So if you are part of the expansion pack, whatever thing, GoldenEye will be coming to that service. Additionally, at the same time, Microsoft announced that GoldenEye is also coming to the Xbox, and that will be part of that'll be on Game Pass, like every other thing that Microsoft publishes. The trailer that they put out had the Rare Replay branding on it, which is interesting. So I think what's going to happen here is if you bought Rare Replay, you will have access to GoldenEye. And then also, if you are on Game Pass, you have access to all the Rare Replay stuff anyway. And as such, it just seems like it is an upscaled version of that game. 007.com. Your home for all the James Bond news, has a story about this happening, and there's a key sentence here. Well, there's a couple of confusing things here, because remember, we're talking about a game that is coming to the Switch. Oh, they have corrected it. Okay. Initially the article they put up said, and I copied it down here. It said, as first announced during the latest Nintendo Direct, a 4K resolution remaster of the N64 classic is coming soon to the console's Nintendo 64, Nintendo Switch online service. There will also be a port to Game Pass. And it was they were trying. It was like the implication there was that the Switch version would somehow run at 4K, which is impossible, unless maybe GoldenEye is coming out the same day as the Switch Pro. No? All right. Well, anyway, 007.com has updated the description there to correctly say that the 4K remaster is only coming to the Xbox. But there is another part. Exclusive to the new Switch version of the 1997 title will be online play, allowing 007 fans across the world to take part in the popular 4-person multiplayer mode together. So only the Switch version will have online play, according to this. The Xbox version apparently will not have any online at all, which, when you think about it as something that they are tying into Rare Replay and all this other stuff, starts to justify why it is this painfully bare bones release of the game. Now, the reason that the Switch version is going to have online play, I don't think that necessarily has a lot to do with exclusivity or something like that. Anything's possible. Maybe that was a conversation earlier in the process. But if you go and if you fire up the N64 stuff on the Switch, all of those games have built-in online support. Because the N64 thing, the shell they built to run N64 games, naturally has online support. And so it's not like they're going out of their way to add online support exclusively to the Switch version of the game. It just so happens that Switch N64 front end to begin with already has online. So it will still be a split screen, presumably, it'll still be a split screen game, even if you're playing online. You're just kind of assigning virtual controllers to online players. That is my assumption, given how the rest of that stuff works. And we'll see. I could be wrong there, but I also don't think that they're going to go back and highly edit an N64 ROM just to work in like single screen multiplayer in a 4-player game. It's just GoldenEye running in their N64 emulator. It's nothing fancier than that. More interesting will be to see if they edit the Twin Towers out of Pilotwings 64 or do something there. So that's not interesting to me. That is not interesting at all. The idea that, like, okay, you can get an Xbox version that has only local split screen multiplayer, which, like, who cares? Or you can get this online version that is just hacked into an N64 emulator, which we could do in RetroArch right now if you wanted to. You don't want to. Especially when you take into account the leaked Xbox Live Arcade remake of GoldenEye that appeared to have full-on Xbox Live support and all of that sort of stuff. If that had remained shadowy and never surfaced and no one knew about it, maybe this would be a thing where you're like, oh, yay. But instead, they kind of, they clearly had a version of that game that they were remaking. Even if they just polished that up and put it out, which it was not, it would not look good by today's standards. But I don't know. Your big multiplayer classic first-person shooter. I maybe would try to put online, and I'm sure they did, right? I'm sure there's probably a number of discussions around what do you really want to do with GoldenEye and all this other shit. And this is probably the only agreement they could come up with. But this just doesn't seem like it's, this seems very bare bones. This feels very like, hey, here's a thing you can do. And yeah, I guess, all right, you can play through that campaign and get those achievements. And some people will be into that, I guess. But this does not seem like the thing that people actually wanted when they said, hey, I want GoldenEye to come back. So, yeah, I assume that one got businessed to death. Because, like the people calling these shots are not idiots. They would certainly know that, like, hey, if we had good online multiplayer in this, that seems like that would be the thing to do, right? If we're going to do this, we should probably do it right? I mean, it is a classic game that people care about, right? We should probably, if we're going to do this at all, we should probably do it correctly. And I'm sure at some point, someone said no. Perhaps it was a publisher a hardware manufacturer even, that is bad at making online games. I don't know. Over the weekend, Ubisoft decided to go ahead and announce, I don't know, I think they're still on a stage somewhere announcing even more Assassin's Creed games. We're up to like 40 or 50 new ones at this point. And they also had some other stuff. This was where the Mario and Rabbids Sparks of Hope stuff kind of got a little bit deeper look than it showed. That was shown in the Nintendo Direct. And that game still looks pretty cool. They spent a lot of time on, and this is again, Emerald did a really good recap of this over at Fanbyte. You know, they spent time saying like, hey, season 4 of Riders, but they spent time saying, hey, The Crew 2 is still getting new content, which is crazy to me. Riders Republic is going free to play. They showed a little bit of Skull and Bones, which they're saying is out November 8th. Okay. Weird. That just seems like a game that is always somehow 12 to 18 months away, but I guess time is weird. Trackmania is going to come to consoles as well as like Stadia and Luna. This is the most recent Trackmania version that's on PC. That'll work fine on consoles. Less so on cloud services. It's a game that requires a certain level of precision that Stadia and Luna are probably not up for. Rocksmith Plus, which I think is out. That's out now, right? The new Rocksmith, or it's close to out. Showed a little bit of the new Just Dance, and then they just went into full Assassin's Creed mode. Basically, all the stuff that was rumored is true from the looks of it. Just about. Codename Red. Okay, let's see. Let's back up. Okay. They are going to release some more Valhalla DLC, and they're calling this the final chapter for Valhalla DLC. That is out sometime this year. They are making some kind of mobile game that is set in China. You will create a character for that. They have Assassin's Creed Mirage, which is the game starring a younger version of Basim, who was a character in Valhalla. And this is the game that feels like it is maybe going to try to evoke classic Assassin's Creed. At least that's what they're going for in the look and the how they're showing and talking about the game, is that it is smaller than the big old crazy ridiculous current Assassin's Creed games, which seems like a welcome difference. That game's coming out next year. And yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that's cool. That's probably the most exciting Assassin's Creed news I've seen in a while, which is kind of crazy, but there we are. And then they started getting into the games that will be part of Assassin's Creed Infinity, which I feel like they were not too clear on what that is. It is a hub. It is a platform for the future of Assassin's Creed. And then the 2 games they announced will be part of Infinity, but that doesn't mean, these are also going to be separate full price games. It's not like it doesn't seem like a live service per se. Like, if anything, it almost sounds like when you launch Call of Duty right now, it shows you 3 different games and one of them is not out yet. So it's a big upsell for Modern Warfare 2. And then it's Warzone, the Battle Royale game, where you can also get into the Modern Warfare stuff if you want to try. And then Vanguard, which is the current one. Black Ops is just missing from that, which is hilarious. And so you can basically launch a Call of Duty Vanguard and then go, oh, wait, I launched the wrong thing. And from that main menu, it will automatically close Vanguard for you and go launch Warzone if that's what you meant to do. And so I want, like, is Assassin's Creed Infinity just a launcher? I feel like they're not necessarily being clear on what the benefit is of bringing these things together, but they are kind of rethinking development in terms of like trying to give people more time, less crunch, and spreading the development of these games out across much more time, which we'll see how that does. Anyway, they've got 2 products that I guess will be a part of Assassin's Creed Infinity. Again, whatever the hell that means. One of them is referred to as codename Red, and Red is set in Japan. And this is being done by the Odyssey team. And then Ubisoft Montreal is working on a game called Codename Hexe. Did they pronounce it as part of the thing? And I already forgot. And this appears to be about the Holy Roman Empire to some degree. And yeah, there was a bit of lip service there paid to the multiplayer aspect of Assassin's Creed, which maybe that's the part where it becomes Infinity, is like, oh, well, in the multiplayer stuff, it doesn't make sense to attach it to any one game. So maybe the multiplayer aspect of the game is kind of this live service, or kind of like, hey, we can introduce new maps that come from these different games. So you can have your Roman Empire map, and then you can have your Japan map, and bring in a China map from the mobile game, or, whatever you want to do. And maybe so that's how they find ways to meaningfully tie it together, is like, oh, progression in these games is, in these big single player spokes of Infinity will then feed back into some kind of online multiplayer mode progression or something like that. I don't know. The multiplayer aspect of Assassin's Creed when they were doing those was really neat. It was ambitious at the time. It wasn't always perfect. It was clunky in some regards, but it was really neat and felt very different from what a lot of the multiplayer was at the time in a lot of other games. And they haven't done it in a while. And I feel like Assassin's Creed has become a totally different thing since then. But it would be very interesting to see them try to return to multiplayer, which is what they say that they're looking at. They're not necessarily, they're not necessarily saying, hey, definitely. They're just like, yeah, we're looking at it. So yeah, that all happened. I don't know. So they showed some new Division DLC and a few other things. They didn't show like X Defiant, which was that kind of Call of Duty-esque, graffiti shooter, or whatever you want to call it. Punk rock first-person shooter. I don't know. That doesn't seem like it was there in any form. There's there's a Rainbow Six mobile game. There's a Division mobile game called Heartland. Oh, no, I'm sorry, that's not mobile. That is a free-to-play multiplayer shooter, the Division Heartland. Division Resurgence is the mobile title. And then there's some new content coming to Division 2 as well. I liked Division 2. I didn't stick with it. I liked the Division, generally speaking, but I played a lot less Division 2 than I did Division 1 because it kind of just wasn't different enough. I mean, it's a significantly better game, don't get me wrong, but like I burned out on Division 2 much faster than I did on the first one. But I would be open to like a full-on, like new content for Division 2 doesn't do anything for me, but I would be interested in seeing what the future of the Division is. Maybe not a mobile title, but yeah, that's of the Ubisoft franchises, sub-franchises, whatever you want to call them, that are out there. I could go for some more The Division. Those games were pretty cool. What else? Let's see. Microsoft's testing a new Xbox Home experience for Xbox Insiders. You can select different rings of Insider, of kind of pre-release firmwares and updates and stuff for your Xbox, much like you can with Windows. Why, I'm coming to you from a Windows Insider build right now. And, the screenshots they're sharing of it doesn't look dramatically different. It is still a very tile-based system and stuff, but it is less about the one big tile of the game you played recently and more about like a set of 6 tiles of the same size of games you played recently, which almost seems, they're bigger than the PlayStation tiles, but it seems like more in line with that in a sense. But My Games and Apps getting a dedicated tile on the homepage, which is smart because that's where you go to see everything else you have installed. Settings and Store and Search also kind of there consistently. And this sounds like it is a series of experiments. This doesn't sound like, and here's what we're doing. This sounds like, here's what we're doing right now. And we are looking to get feedback from people. We are not, they're not letting every single person in that alpha skip ahead ring into it. It seems like it is, rolling out a little more slowly, a little bit more selectively, all that sort of stuff. I would love to see a dramatic visual refresh of the Xbox interface. I think it's time. I think it's beyond time. It's not to say that the Xbox interface is necessarily bad. I think it could be better. And in fact, like reading their desires for these tests does sound like something of an improvement to me, but a minor one. But also it's very focused on like Game Pass and like, here's the stuff that's recently added to Game Pass, like the stuff that probably people turning on an Xbox want to see and know about. I just think from a visual standpoint, I would really like to see something bold here. I think the PlayStation 5 needs would benefit from a much larger rethink as well, especially now that they're getting into the like large game library game of like, you might have access to hundreds of additional titles all of a sudden, and how do you navigate that stuff? The PlayStation interface, the PlayStation 5 interface as it stands right now, is not built to handle that well. And so I think they need to rethink a lot of that stuff on that end of things now that they have this large game library that you'll get access to as from the higher tiers of PlayStation Plus. This Xbox redesign seems like it is acknowledging that, like, hey, we need to find ways to deal with hundreds of games here in some cases, and find ways to surface that information in a relevant and useful fashion for players. I don't know that this is fully solving the problem when I look at what they're talking about now, but they're getting started on it. We'll see where they end up. But at the same time, like I said, I would love bold visual refreshes for both of these front ends, both of these dashboards. I think the XMB style that Sony has had for a while now, I mean, the current PlayStation 5 has gotten away from it a little bit, but I would like to see something fresh. I would like to see something that looks cool and new and is still useful. It doesn't feel like that the current iterations of these dashboards are at like peak efficiency. You know what I mean? So it's not like you look at it and go like, well, if they visually redesigned it, it would just be worse. Like, I think that there's probably a way to make it look cooler and better, while also making it more useful. And I feel the same way about the Xbox interface. I think there's just more work to be done. We'll see where Xbox ends up. Hopefully Blades, right? I mean, that's always the answer. Blades. Blades. Not pins. Not your manually defined weird groups that, like, I can't imagine. Does anyone even use those? Does anyone pin anything to an Xbox ever? No. I'm just going to go ahead and say probably not. Maybe some people. I'm sure there are some people that do, but that doesn't seem like the solution to the question. Let's see. Jim Ryan is not happy about the current future of Call of Duty on PlayStation devices. And he has called Xbox's Call of Duty offer inadequate on many levels. And so this comes out of the ongoing regulatory bodies looking at the potential merger, the potential acquisition of Activision by Microsoft, and how that will impact the game industry. Is that going to cause a monopoly situation? Is that going to be unfair competitively? All that sort of stuff. And so to try to, accommodate these requests and make this go through, Microsoft has gone ahead and said, like, and this is how they've behaved on Minecraft, and I think they've got a decent track record in this space already with it. But they went ahead and said, yes, we are extending our current agreement. I guess they signed a new deal with Sony to keep Call of Duty coming to the PlayStation. And so Microsoft presented this as like, of course, we want to keep bringing Call of Duty to the PlayStation. A lot of people play it there, and they make a lot of money there. It'd be, I think, reading between the lines, I think it would be fucking stupid for them to not put Call of Duty as many places as possible. Like, that game needs to be in your face everywhere it goes in the most mainstream, loud way imaginable. It's why Activision is bringing Modern Warfare 2 to Steam, because they realize, like, having our own fucking storefront with Battle.net, like, is a hoop that some players don't want to jump through. Maybe we can squeeze more money out of players if we allow it to show up on Steam as well. And maybe that'll be worth it. And so they're coming back to Steam this year, which I think is smart. There's no again, I feel like there's zero benefit to Microsoft to making Call of Duty a Game Pass exclusive, an Xbox exclusive, all of this sort of stuff over the years. But that is that is kind of the noise that Jim Ryan is making on the Sony end of things when he says that the offer to extend beyond the current 3-year agreement, which sounds like it is somewhere in the neighborhood of 8 years total, he calls it inadequate on many levels. I hadn't intended to this is a statement he gave to gamesindustry.biz. I hadn't intended to comment on what I understood to be a private business discussion, but I feel the need to set the record straight because Phil Spencer brought this into the public forum. He's referring to a kind of letter posted publicly. Bobby Kotick wrote something relatively similar but shorter, and it got posted to the investor relations site for Activision. And so, but those were kind of like because the UK regulators were trying to ask questions about it and go like, hey, are you going to fuck Sony over? Are you going to do this? And they were like, no. In fact, we have offered to extend it. Anyway, the rest of what Jim Ryan has to say here. Microsoft has only offered for Call of Duty to remain on PlayStation for 3 years after the current agreement between Activision and Sony ends. After almost 20 years of Call of Duty on PlayStation, their proposal was inadequate on many levels and failed to take account of the impact on our gamers. We want to guarantee PlayStation gamers continue to have the highest quality Call of Duty experience, and Microsoft's proposal undermines this principle. That feels very... I don't know. That just doesn't ring true to me. And again, you know, I don't know the nature of these discussions, but I do know that putting out a half-assed Call of Duty on PlayStation compared to the version that is showing up on Xbox doesn't benefit anyone. It doesn't benefit Microsoft to do the work. It doesn't benefit Sony. It doesn't benefit the people making the games. It doesn't benefit players, all that sort of stuff. I just, it's hard for me to see a situation where Sony is truly getting fucked over here. Also, I guess like part of this is my take on Call of Duty in general, where yes, it is still a very big franchise, but it is not the only game in town, especially when you take into account the popularity of battle royales and all of this sort of stuff. Like the world has started to move on. It's not to say that Call of Duty is not still a big game. It still sells quite well, obviously. And there's still the free-to-play component with the Warzone stuff that is, you know, generating a lot of revenue from battle passes and all the other post-release shit. But in a world where Apex Legends exists, in a world where even Battlefield, for as much as, I mean, fuck Battlefield, you know, like Battlefield's not a good game. Fuck Battlefield. I don't mean to say fuck Battlefield. Battlefield's not a great game this year. It has at times been great. But the shooter market is highly competitive. You can say that Call of Duty is the biggest game in town, but again, it's not like Microsoft is coming through and saying, also, we're not going to let anyone else make competitive shooters. If anything, like let's say Microsoft does say, yeah, we're not going to put that out on PlayStation anymore. And the deal goes through. Let's assume that doesn't trigger any alarm bells and that manages to happen. You know what that opens up? A wide fucking hole on the PlayStation platform for someone else to come through and reinvent shooters. Fucking finally. Something that absolutely needs to be done. And Sony bought Bungie. And so, you know, there's plenty of developers out there that would be interested in doing such a thing. And so it just, none of this seems like incredibly anti-competitive to me, unless you're just looking at sales figures and then you go like, oh yeah, I guess that would, you know, if that were to happen, which it doesn't seem like it's in Microsoft's best interest to let that happen, that would be a lot of money walking out the door for Sony. But instead, it'll probably still just happen as is. And this just, I don't know. To me, this just feels like Sony just trying to get in the way of the deal because they can. And I don't know. It's business, and I'm sure everyone is going to be absolutely shitty in business in every way they can. But this just seems like Microsoft just went into this kind of, I think, under the impression of like, oh, we're going to have to put Call of Duty onto these platforms for, in fact, you know, they're probably like, fuck it, can we do a Switch version? Like, fuck it, let's make money. Like, they're in the business of making money with this stuff. It's why you have a guy like Phil Spencer elevating to be like CEO of games or whatever it is, instead of just like head of Xbox, is because, you know, they're trying to look at this stuff in a somewhat multi-platform sort of way. Again, obviously they're looking at it in terms of like the Xbox and the Xbox Game Pass is those are the first mouths getting fed. Like, let's not be crazy here. But they're looking to make money on this shit. It's not, you know, come on. So, and when you look at a game that has this free-to-play aspect, when you look at a game that already has this cross-play aspect, all this other stuff, it's different from the Bethesda situation of like, yeah, we're going to honor existing agreements, and these games are going to be, you know, exclusive to Xbox past a certain point. It feels like a very different situation with Call of Duty. Call of Duty feels like it falls more into the Minecraft zone of like, yeah, Minecraft is on all these platforms and it gets updated and all this other stuff. So I don't know. It's just hard for me to see a scenario where this I don't know. Yeah. Again, it's a huge percentage of revenue. Call of Duty still makes a fuck ton of money, and I get that aspect of it. That is what this is really about. Is the fears of like, oh, if they put, you know, let's stop them from putting Call of Duty on Game Pass because that's going to, you know, and yeah. But again, I don't feel like that is, I just don't feel like Call of Duty is that big of a deal. And I feel like Call of Duty has seen its biggest days, and, you know, it will probably get a shot in the arm by debuting, you know, when it starts debuting on Game Pass day one, and what that means for the number of players in that franchise. That will probably do something. But again, I don't think that the market for competitive shooters is so completely sewn up that Call of Duty is worth this much of a stink. So I don't know. That's my take on it. I think if you look at the numbers, I see why they're making this argument and all that sort of shit. But, you know, again, when you start taking into consideration all of the other games involving shooting guns on the market, your Fortnites, your whatever's, all those other things out there, Call of Duty just doesn't feel like it defines the category the way it used to. And so this just feels like a really weird vestigial argument of just like, this feels like a argument that this industry would have had 9 years ago or something, and now it just feels weird to me. But I don't know. It is in Sony's best interest to get everything they can and to try to complain to the regulators in a way that makes this deal as compromised as possible for Microsoft at the end of the day. Like, that's probably the thing that matters most. The Xbox Elite controller. This got announced last week, finally. There have been pictures leaking out of Mexico for the longest time about a white Xbox Elite controller. And I thought at some point that this was just going to end up being something that they did some of and then killed because they were like, well, we have to redesign the Elite controller anyway. So those were tests of the Elite Series 2, but Instead, no, they are in fact bringing out a new colorway of the Elite Series 2 controller. This is not a Series 3. This is not a Series X. This is not an updated controller per se, but it is white, and it is called the Elite Core model, and it will be $50 cheaper because it comes with none of the little bits and carrying case and all of the other accessories that the full-on Elite controller comes with. Because if you remember correctly, the Elite controller is something where you could take the D-pad off and take the sticks off and put on different higher or lower domes and different D-pads and has trigger stops and all this other stuff. So like those replaceable parts will not come with the core version. That stuff will be sold separately if you decide later on that you want to upgrade. But it does mean that the controller, which is coming out next week, will be $130, which is that's less than the $180 they want for the full version. And of course, it will be $60 if you want to get all of the accessories and back paddles and all of that sort of stuff. Sure. I don't know, the Elite Series 2 controller, I don't use it anymore. I've replaced it with just a default regular Series S controller here on the PC, because I think the improvements they made from the original Xbox One controller to the Xbox Series X and S controller did everything I need to do. It's still a nice light controller. And lighter than the Elite controller is for sure. And it feels nice in the hand and all that sort of stuff. And so I've been using that instead of my Elite controller. And the Elite controllers have been a little finicky in times. And you know, like I had to re-glue the rubber on mine, and the back tabs for the trigger stops busted off and they're missing now. And, you know, little things like that over time that kind of not great. And they're also going to do a design lab version. So if you want to do a custom Elite controller, you'll be able to do that too at a later date. I don't know. There's a part of me that would rather, I'd be interested in seeing what an Elite Series 3, what a new Elite controller would do, but maybe it would just be this with a share button by default, because, you know, there is a button where that share button goes on the Elite controller, but it's what they use to toggle between different profiles. You can store different kind of controller profiles on the controller itself, and toggle them that way, which is not a bad idea. But I just never used any of that stuff. And I found that despite having all of these different metal things I could bolt to the stick, the defaults that they had on the one thing that was nicer about the Elite controller was that the analog sticks themselves felt a little bit tighter and better. And that has carried over to the standard Xbox Series X controller, that tightness. And so I don't really need the Elite controller anymore. They also are selling I have not bought this. I keep thinking about it because it's a terrible idea. But they are selling an Xbox Elite jersey, an Xbox Elite Core jersey for $100 that is meant to be paired with the controller, or I guess not even the controller, because you if you're going to benefit from this, it means you bought the extra accessories, because it has a magnetic strip on it that you can take the metal bits off of and I guess just stick them to your shirt, so they're just there for you when you need them. It's a very silly concept. That if it was not $100, I would probably consider buying one, because it is up my alley in terms of, look at this silly ass thing. It's got a Velcro patch on the side that you can stick Velcro patches to if you have those, I guess. The bullet points for this are amazing. Moisture wicking microfiber towel panel. Comfort venting. Velcro patch panel for personalization. Screen print detailing, including 3M reflective ink. Woven hip label. Zippered sleeve pocket and magnetic band on chest for stowing metal Xbox Elite controller components. Yeah, it's, you know, very silly, but they announced that alongside the core controller, and I'm all for it. I like they have a very plain font that they just write Xbox in, the Xbox logo, the Xbox typeface that they use on a lot of their merch. I kind of like in a very like plain Jane kind of way. Like it's got a bold, nice look to it that I'm kind of into, that they don't use on the consoles themselves, which is kind of weird. But and so I always think like I could get like, no, what? I have some PlayStation merchandise around here somewhere. A hat. See, PlayStation has the buttons, the triangle, the circle, square, and cross that they can throw onto, that they can, you know, throw onto merchandise and stuff like that, and that works pretty well. I feel like the Xbox stuff has been a little. They don't quite have as many things to pull from just from console branding type stuff. I feel like a lot of that stuff, a lot of the older stuff is a little too 2000s. You could do throwback Xbox stuff. I know they have done a little bit of it here and there, but But I don't know. I like the general direction of the Xbox merchandise for what they're doing, because it's just very plain. It just says, yo, this just says Xbox on it. Sometimes we wrote it in a square, so it says XBOX, and that works out okay too. New version of the PlayStation 5 is on sale. The CFI 1200 appears that it has gone on sale late August in Australia. And so, according to Video Games Chronicle, someone on YouTube named Austin Evans has gotten one of these and torn it apart and looked at the insides and found it to be quite different internally. Not that it's necessarily performing any differently, but it weighs quite a bit less. I guess now the full version of the PlayStation 5 with disk drive actually weighs less than the digital version did at launch. Slightly more efficient power consumption, according to Evans' tests. A launch while playing Astro's Playroom. This was the test bed. A launch PS5 drew around 218 watts of electricity. Last year's updated model drew 229 watts, but the new model, the CFI 1200, pulls only 201 watts. A lot of components have moved around. Apparently the CMOS battery is a little bit harder to get to, which is a bummer if you have to ever replace your CMOS battery, but generally speaking, it's moved around, reorganized, probably a lot more efficient and potentially even somewhat cheaper for them to make. Which is interesting in a world where the price of the PlayStation 5 is going up. Like they're getting it at both ends. Like, hey, we figured out ways to make this thing probably more cheaply, probably a little bit more inexpensive to make the same device. That's a natural thing that happens multiple times over the course of a hardware life cycle. But having that kind of set against Sony saying, like, we have got to raise the price. In Europe, they went from 399 euros to 449 euros for the digital version in Europe. You know, Japan, the full version went from 55,000 yen to a little over 60,000 yen. You know, it's like significant increases in the face of inflation and all other stuff. So, having them on the back end also finding ways to make the console more efficiently and probably, saving money on building them, which allows them to build more and, all this other stuff, I'm sure. That kind of doesn't feel great. But again, this is stuff that naturally happens over the course of a generation, especially I feel like Sony more than a lot of other manufacturers have done these huge internal redesigns over the course of a generation. And this is how we eventually get to a slim version of the console and all that other stuff. But again, having that set against the price increase kind of doesn't go down super well. A couple more news stories here. Twitch.tv. Have you heard of it? You should check it out. There's people on there. They play video. It's like you could watch people play video games. Like what? Like, I'm sorry. What? Don't we just play video games? What are we even doing? Don't that beat all? Twitch is eliminating host mode. Which is a mode. So basically, you can create a list of channel, or this will be going away on October 3rd. Host mode is something where you can create a list of other channels that if they're live when you're not. So if this channel that I'm on right now is not live, but Vectroid's live, you could come to my channel and you would see her in there, and it's my separate chat room, but her stream. It's always been awkward. It's always been a weird thing that over the years has made less and less sense because of how the Twitch channel pages look. Like, you kind of have to like click into to get to the chat page to begin with if a channel's not live. It just never really seemed like something that was that useful or anyone really ever engaged with in a meaningful way. Raids and such seem like a much more active and meaningful way to do this. The hosting thing just seems like something that made a lot more sense years and years and years ago when it was initially rolled out. And this, according to this Polygon story, host mode was introduced in 2014. And remember what Twitch looked like back then? Who knows? It's probably was a much different channel page experience back then. But nowadays, with the way the channel pages look and the way Twitch just kind of flows, the host mode thing just doesn't seem like it makes sense anymore. So like they're getting rid of it, and I think there's some people that are like, why are they doing that? But like this just seems like something that was not well integrated into modern Twitch, and also it seems like something that is not really being used anymore. You've got you have the ability to raid, and of course like the co-stream stuff where they've built some additional functionality to kind of make it easier for you to talk over other streams while you are streaming, which is a more useful thing. Like, say, there are different ways to say, hey, this other channel's live, and they'll still have, suggested channels and some of that other stuff to kind of show your list of people that you vouch for, or whatever you want to call it. They just won't automatically show up in your thing. It's just, it was interesting to see some people sort of fussing about this a little bit, but I don't know. This just seems like something that felt more and more out of step with just the current designs of Twitch. So I guess like I'm not, this doesn't seem like something that is helping channels to grow. I think that one of the things is like, small streamers can't catch a break. How is this going to happen? It just doesn't seem like this is something that was being used very well at all. A former Twitch developer Chris Gamble had a long thread on this because he was there when hosts rolled out and all this other stuff, and kind of he's got an interesting little Twitter thread about kind of the ongoing development of Twitch and how host mode doesn't really seem to have a place anymore in modern Twitch, and how that's probably not a bad thing. It just seems like they've developed better, more interesting tools to use, and host mode is not really one of them. So yeah, I don't know. Interesting. That'll be going away October 3rd. We'll see how it ends up changing the experience of using Twitch. I just don't see it. I don't ever see it being a big deal. We'll see. Also going away on a much shorter time frame than Twitch's host mode. Pour one out for Babylon's Fall. I know, I'm surprised as well. This morning at 2 a.m. in the darkness of night, Square Enix decided to roll out this announcement, announcing the end of service, the impending end of service for Babylon's Fall. Do you remember Babylon's Fall? No? Do you not? Babylon's Fall was a game that Platinum made, that came out. Well, it says here, hey, with the desire of delivering an exhilarating online multiplayer action RPG set in an elaborate high fantasy world, we launched the game's official service on Thursday, March 3rd, 2022, and have continued to undertake additional development and operations. However, it is with deep regret to inform you that we will be terminating the game service on February 27th, 2023. So not really making it even a full year, just shy of a year, I guess. This is, well, it's sad. Ultimately this is sad, right? As a result, we will also cancel the large-scale updates that we had planned. Yeah. In terms of the plan moving forward, Season 2 will run until November 29th as scheduled, and the final season will begin with the maintenance scheduled on the same day. The final season is the period during which you can earn the ranking rewards of Season 2. As a way of expressing our gratitude to all our players, we plan to implement as many events and other initiatives as we can leading up to the end of service. And then they've got a timetable. As of today, it says here, following the publication of this announcement, sales of the digital version as well as the physical version on retailer sites will draw to a close. So it sounds like they are literally taking it off sale. So if you want to get a sealed copy of Babylon's Fall, now is the time. They are also ceasing the sale of the premium currency, When Season 2 ends, they will stop selling the premium Battle Pass. And then they will roll out some events and some stuff like that. In February 23rd, I'm sorry, in February of 2023, they have something planned called Quest Boost. And then at 11 p.m. Pacific time on the 27th, service ends and the Hanging Garden player site will close down. Schedule may be subject to change without prior notice. After the service ends, you will no longer be able to play the game. All gameplay data on the game servers will be deleted following the termination of the service. Oof. Yeah, sucks. I don't know, but that game was terrible. I don't know if you remember, like when that game and it did not play well. It looked funky. The social hubs and stuff were confusingly built in a way that was not conducive to you getting back out there and getting back in the fight. And it did not attract a player base. Square did not market it particularly well out of the gate, so it felt like something that just shipped and died. You know, people were reporting low Steam numbers on that thing. The week of launch, it was like, hey, 14 people are playing this, and crazy shit like that. Like it had been a long time since I've seen a full retail game from a major publisher come out and faceplant this effing hard. Oh my God. Like at the time, it was just like you're witnessing, it was sad. Like imagine that you spent however many years of your career working on Babylon's Fall and the trials and tribulations that must have come with developing that game in the first place. And then you put it out in this. Doesn't even make it a year. And and honestly doesn't deserve to make it a year. You know? It's a game with it was too rough in too many different ways. And I was surprised by just how bad so many aspects of it were, just from a design perspective, gameplay, like you know, what have you. Like a lot of different angles on that game looked terrible. And so it's not surprising that this game failed to catch an audience, but it is shocking to see it all fall apart that quickly. You know, week of launch, it was like, hey, this thing's done. I remember Square sending out copies of it. They did send out versions of the game. You know, they did. I don't think they activated. No, they did. They activated a couple of days early. It was like whatever but it wasn't like early for reviewers. It was you know, you bought the expensive version of the game, and so you get to play 3 days early. God, imagine. You probably could have spent $100 on that game, right? You probably could have, like whatever the collector's version or whatever, you probably could have purchased a $100 version of that game, I assume. And then on top of that, it had a full cash shop for buying skins, and you know, it's got a battle pass, and you know, forget about all the post-release potential spends. Like, what a disaster. And they don't really get into why they're shutting it down. This is the whole post is attributed to the Babylon's Fall development and operations team. And they have some closing remarks here. Leading up until today, we received a lot of feedback from all our Sentinels through multiple surveys, official live streams, our official Discord server, and social media channels, which has been a great help to us in the development and operation teams. In particular, through our surveys, we received a great deal of enthusiastic messages of support, alongside keen observations of issues and suggestions for improvement. This really made us feel that we were able to create the world of Babylon's Fall together with our players. Despite all of your support, we are truly sad and sorry to say that we will be unable to continue with the game's service. We hope you continue to enjoy playing Babylon's Fall until the service ends. Yeah. What a fucking bummer, man. This is Platinum. Platinum has made some incredible video games. Square has made video games that are well regarded. All of that shit, y'all. But man, this was just a miss across the board. It'd be interesting to see. I would be interested in knowing how this game got so far off track. There were the rumors at the time that it was like, oh, well, the game wasn't originally designed to be a live service game, and they bolted that shit on later. You hear a few different versions of the story. But no matter which version ends up being true, you know, the truth remains that no one wanted to play this game. So that'll be going until February. If you're into that sort of thing, well, I guess you can't buy it anymore. You probably, I mean, there'll be physical copies going around here, but I assume the digital version is no longer on sale. I don't have Steam open, or I would go look right now, but I don't know. That's it for the news. Why don't we check out some of your emails here, because it's email time. I'm looking over, and there's still, you know, despite my best efforts, there is still no button on this thing marked email, but I do have this. podcast@guard.bike is the email address. You can send in your emails as some of these folks have, and I will look through them, and I will put little stars next to the ones that I like, or the ones that strike me funny, and I will consider giving them a look again down the line here. And I have looked at some of these. I'm installing. I don't know why I'm installing. I'm installing because I'm bringing up emails and I'm reading emails with one eye while talking to you with my mouth, and all of that sort of stuff. David from Boston writes in and says, I've been getting interested in the history of console games lately, thanks in no small part to your incredible Game Boys to Men podcast. Thanks, David. In particular, I'm fascinated by the transition to 3D games that took place in the era of the PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and N64. Looking back, it seems wild to me that only Nintendo launched with a controller that included an analog stick out the gate. Famously, Sega did not correctly anticipate the transition to the third dimension, but Sony obviously did. So what up with that? Even then, wouldn't an analog stick be an obvious inclusion on a controller that was designed to play 3D games? Would love to hear your thoughts. Well, David, I have to turn this down. It's making me crazy. The music's too good. You know, if you think about go look at like Jumping Flash, an early PlayStation game that is set in a 3D space. I think you had a lot of developers that weren't anticipating the need to have like really good and fast control in these 3D spaces. It was more like, well, yeah, you can hop forward and you can stop and turn. And we've got these new shoulder buttons now, so we can have strafe buttons as well as, you know, we have 4 shoulders now, so we can devote 2 of them to strafing left and right. That's the thing people want to do in first-person games, right? And so I think that they were anticipating 3D games and games set in the 3D space, which is obviously different than polygonal games. I think that they were anticipating that the shoulder buttons would end up being enough, and that camera control and stuff like that wouldn't necessarily be. It would be something that you could do with the face buttons. So it was like, oh, well, hit the triangle button, and you can do there, you know, like hit this button and to reorient the camera the way you want it to be looking, and that sort of stuff. And that didn't cut it for long. You have a lot of games in the early PlayStation era that, you know, were set in 3D spaces that were trying to do that sort of stuff. Your Tomb Raiders and stuff like that, and I feel like those games did not control well enough, and that an analog sticks were a must. It's easy now to look back on the dual analog setup and go like, of course this had to be obvious, right? Of course this is exactly what we needed. But it wasn't until Sony made that a standard that it became the standard. Because even when Sega put out Knights and put out that awful 3D controller, like even that thing was just one kind of analog-y thing and then 2 analog triggers, it didn't really fit the bill as much as he wanted to. The N64 controller, again, you're kind of giving up fidelity on your right stick equivalent by having C buttons instead of a proper second analog stick. But that, for the time, before games really got invested in these 3D spaces and all that sort of stuff, that worked very well up to a certain point. And yeah, so I think it just, controllers evolved, and that evolved game design, and that in turn evolved controllers. I think it was just a natural thing that, they weren't anticipating the types of games, the speed at which some of those games would operate or want to operate, and the value of a second analog stick. There's probably also a certain amount of hey, if we introduce all this crazy stuff, are players even going to be able to manage using this controller? Will it become too complicated? You've heard over the years, it's like, oh man, these controllers are only getting more complicated over the years, and what can we do to simplify the controllers in order to make it more appealing to a wider variety of players and all of that sort of stuff? And so you end up with that push and pull as well, where you're trying to attract a mainstream consumer, and you think well, having a thumb on each stick is crazy. No one's going to be able to do that. We need to sell that separately for Ape Escape, because Ape Escape's for hardcore gamers, and all that sort of stuff. But it's become very natural. But I still think a modern controller can be very intimidating to someone who doesn't play a lot of games. And with the which stick do you hold? How do you even hold it? What do I put my fingers here? Which is the D-pad? Which is what? How do I shoot? How do I run? All that sort of stuff. I think there's a lot of people that would still be relatively new to games that would have trouble with modern controllers that might do better without all those analog sticks. But gameplay would suffer as a result. So it's a trade-off. All that stuff's a trade-off. John writes in and says, the last couple of console generations never felt to me like they had the big Gears 3 sized tentpole games of previous generations. Is that nostalgia? Is coverage for games less intense? Gaming is bigger than it's ever been, and esports are huge, but it feels like games aren't as big as they once were. Any thoughts on why? Yeah, we talked a little bit about this when I was talking about the Madden launch, when they had Ozzy Osbourne playing on top of a frickin' theater in New York, and the midnight launch of Halo 3 and some of that other stuff. I think, it's a multifaceted change in the way games are purchased and consumed and thought about and all that sort of stuff. Digital sales is preventing you from ever getting those big mainstream lineups at midnight, right? People don't need to go stand in front of a frickin' store to buy a game anymore. They just click some buttons and preload it. That's probably the biggest change. The other questions, is coverage for games less intense? I'm going to say coverage for games is more intense, but at a different time. The way games are getting announced is a little bit different. The way the pre-order cycle hypes up, the way that a lot of stuff happens with now you've got a lot of different ways to play a game pre-release. You got your closed betas, you've got, your multiplayer beta. So your games that are these big tentpole size things, sometimes you get the opportunity to look at them pre-release. Call of Duty is a great example. I think this weekend they're having their first, hey, if you pre-order the game, you get to play the beta for this game that is clearly close to done. And all that sort of stuff. So you have those sorts of situations that are making launch day a little less less special, because people have had multiple opportunities to play some of these products. And so they've already pre-ordered it. It's already a done deal. Coverage is an interesting thing, because the ways that players see games pre-release or at release has changed so much, right? It's not the days of IGN and GameSpot competing for the first gameplay or the first trailer, or those days are long dead. the way it was when, you know, like a Gears 3 or some of these Xbox 360 games were coming out, like the big midnight launch combined with the, you know, like we sent people out to New York and did a live broadcast from New York from Ozzy Osbourne doing his thing for the Madden launch of all things. It was like, I look at that now and go like, that's fucking crazy. Why? I mean, why? Because like, why not? You know, like we have the budget to fucking do it. We should try to find ways to cover games in crazier ways. Why not? But nowadays, like that just doesn't feel like, that feels like more of an ad than anything else. So you end up in these situations where I think that the way players watch games has changed because of stuff like Twitch, right? Because of the types of people, the big streamers on Twitch that are getting access to games early in some cases, or are streaming on day one. And, you know, you have some games that you have these multiplayer components where they're trying to take advantage of like the Twitch drops system and, you know, inspiring people to watch that way so they can get rewards and betas and all this other stuff. There are just so many different ways to kind of drive consumers around that weren't there back then. And so you have a lot of different, just the situations are different. And a lot of that happens on a much more compressed cycle. It's not like 6 months out, here's the first gameplay trailer of this. It's like, now, when do we see first gameplay of a game? That varies depending on the game. It's the cycles for each game end up being a little bit different. And that's nice in a way. But in some ways it does feel smaller. In some ways it doesn't feel as special. But I think a lot of that is nostalgia. Nostalgia for the times when games felt like the biggest thing. Games felt like the biggest things on the planet, and that felt like a rarity. You were like, man, look at this crazy. And they would tout the numbers and say, hey, did you know that Halo 3, did you know that Grand Theft Auto San Andreas is the single biggest 24-hour period in sales for any piece of media ever? And the industry could puff its chest out and say, tell the movie industry I said go fuck yourself, you know, like all this other stuff. You know, they had these big chest beating moments of just like, look at how big video games are. And I think that's nostalgic because the way things seem now, games are just big. Everyone knows the game industry. Like, it's not to say that it has the respect of everyone around the world, but gaming is a much more normal thing now. Gaming is a much more mainstream thing now. And so it's you know, you have your big releases and stuff like that, but, you know, digital sales, like, you know, because like albums are in the same boat, right? Remember when Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 came out and people went and lined up in front of the Warehouse and Tower Records and all of these places? I still have somewhere a bandana. I didn't get this. I did not go to this. I don't know who did. I don't remember how I ended up with this, but I got when you bought these Guns N' Roses albums at the Warehouse, they had special bandanas that said Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion, but also had the Warehouse logo on them. And they gave them to people who went there for the midnight launch of Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. And now that shit just hits Spotify on Thursday night at 9 o'clock, and who gives a shit? Like when the Kendrick album came out, 9 o'clock hit, and people went, oh shit, I should load that up and listen to it. And they did. And they talked about it on Twitter for a day. And then that was that. Not to say that, like, you know, there was a ton of discussion around, I'm sure there was somewhere, I don't know, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2. I feel like most of my discussion was like, they should have cut about half these tracks and put out one good album instead of fucking two mediocre ones. But, you know, who am I? Actually, I think I was more like, this is no Appetite for Destruction. Also, Guns N' Roses maybe kind of sucks. I don't know. But my point, I think, remains. It's you know, media consumption is very different now, and so you're nostalgic for a time when that stuff was a little bit harder to come by and thus had to be a little bit more special. There was a little bit of rarity with it, you know? A store might sell out. And that doesn't happen. Now, it happens with PlayStation 5s, but it doesn't happen with games. You click the button on the store and the game comes out the other end. The game ends up on your hard drive and you hit go, and that's that. And there's enough for everyone. So you still have these big tentpole releases, and they're marketed, and these are the games that get the big open betas, and these are the games that get the big, the pre-releases and the big influencer campaigns and people streaming it and Twitch drops and this and that. So many different levers that they can pull to try to get a game in front of as many people as possible, because that attention span has been distributed across all of these different places as well. When live streaming was not democratized the way it is today, I mean, look at this shit. I just wrote video games on a sign and put it on my closet, and here I am. That's all it takes. Anyone can do it. That was not the case. You had to have a GameSpot. You had to have an IGN. You had to have these places that existed that would attract millions of people every day to find the latest game news. And now that stuff is in 3,000 different places. Well, not 3,000, but it's in a lot of different streams. It's in a lot of different streamers. It's on a publisher's official YouTube channel where they've been posting all of their shit. I mean, we just watched that Nintendo Direct today. Nintendo, they can show that stuff early to the media for pre-briefs, and they probably still do. They always would pre-brief some media for E3 or for some of these other things, and maybe they did for this one, maybe they didn't. I don't know. But all they have to do is yesterday say, hey, we're doing a thing, and people show up. They don't need to partner with IGN to do it. They don't need to go to GameSpot to do it. They don't need permission from the media to make it happen. They just hit the button and go, the same way I did here, the same way you can at home. And so in some ways that's a little less special, and the way Sony's going to do later today with their 20 minutes of whatever. And so everyone, this is something that started, gosh, I want to say 2013, maybe 2014, somewhere around there, where there was an increase in the amount of hand-wringing being done by the traditional media around trailers, because the change that happened, it used to be that like a game company would want to get its trailer in front of people. And so they would say like, well, let's give the exclusive to IGN and they'll run it on their YouTube channel and their website. It'll be on the front page of their website for 24 hours, maybe even more, whatever. And that's how they would get the word out. And then suddenly, like, the negotiation, it seems like the stakes changed, where suddenly it was like, oh, well, yeah, you can put it up on your website and you can be first on your website and whatever, but we're going to put it up on our YouTube channel at the exact same time. Also, we would strongly prefer, in fact, we are going to demand that you do not publish our trailer to your YouTube channel for a length of time. That may be 24 hours, that may be forever, that may be, like all that sort of stuff. Because the publishers were getting the views themselves. And so they were getting you, the customer, to come to them directly. So that they can market to you directly without having to get the pesky media in the way. You can't control these fuckers. They're always going off and saying, hey, this game's actually bad, don't buy it. Those motherfuckers. Cut them out of the loop. Don't need them. We'll go direct. And in fact, if we do this right, if we do this well enough, we can get people to mistrust the media along the way too. It's been a fascinating handful of years in this business, in the world, really, if you want to expand out. But, if we stick to gaming, you had EA interviewing themselves. You had EA running their YouTube channel, and you had people conducting interviews with EA game developers to put up on EA's YouTube channel, and everyone involved was employed with EA. And so you're controlling the interview cycle as well. And so suddenly you're like, oh, well, they can, and every outlet is writing about it. So who cares? Like, they're still ending up on GameSpot and IGN because those sites are going, well, let's embed this YouTube video, or let's write an article that points to this YouTube video because it's still newsworthy. And so suddenly you've got these websites linking off to publisher-run YouTube channels and all this other stuff. So there was a meeting called a meeting of the minds, a Second Street meeting of the minds, where I went, and the editor-in-chief of GameSpot at the time and a couple of IGN people and I think Adam Sessler was there. You know, we got together, and the topic of conversation is like, what do we do about these trailers? What do we do about game publishers not wanting us to put trailers up on our website? It was a really funny conversation because I don't, you know, like we were never in the business of benefiting from trailers. We were never in the business of benefiting from running trailers on our YouTube channel to try to grow. Maybe it's why we didn't grow as much as we could have, but hey, it's a separate story for a much different time. And so I was just like, don't run them. Just don't run them. If a publisher is going to come to you and say, hey, we're only going to give this to you if you are pointing to our channel, and you're sitting there telling me that you're worried about continually pointing people to these other channels and all, you know, and pointing off site and that you're worried that you're losing power to the publishers, don't run the trailer. Just say, fuck off. We're not going to point to your channel. We're not going to do that. And don't. And just stick to that. No one wanted to do that. And I don't know that would have necessarily worked per se anyway, because, you know, people want to find the trailer no matter what. So they're going to find it on the YouTube. They're going to end up on that YouTube channel one way or the other. Right. So, yeah, it's just that was a very interesting time. But, you know, since then you just see more and more of that. And then in the years after that, man, I am fucking rambling here. I'm sorry. But that is also when a lot of things changed around the influencer conversation, and you started to see more and more publishers. And this was often described to me as a war between a company's public relations department and its marketing department, where the marketing department was going out and spending money to secure influencers, basically saying like, we're going to pay you to stream this game. And this was back in the day when disclosures around that were fucking abysmal. And so it wasn't always said, hey, this streamer that you love, because you relate to them, because they're just like you, is super being paid to fucking play this video game. Meanwhile, that same audience is out there talking about how corrupt the media is. Man, just talk about a fucking kick in the stomach. It's like, God damn, man. I have spent decades of my career devoted to fucking not taking money for playing games. It has not stopped people fucking constantly claiming the otherwise. But now there are people literally doing that. And you're like, no, that person would shoot me straight because he's a real guy just like me. Like, motherfucker, are you kidding me? Oh, man. It was wild. Disclosures around that are much better now. And that sort of stuff is frowned upon at the very least. I'm sure there's still some cases that maybe slip through the cracks, but it was a very fascinating time. And, you know, the marketing divisions would start to say like, hey, you know, yeah, like you don't need the fucking press. You don't need those guys. What, you know, you're going to give them the game and they're going to say it's bad. Why do that when we can instead spend that money paying for this guy to play it for 3 hours and say how cool it is? And, you know, that was the order of things for a good long time. And then you'd start to hear stories in a few different ways. You'd start to hear like, hey, yeah, we spent the last year doing that, and it is not leading to increased sales of the game. It is not like the ROI on us paying streamers to stream is not working out. And that would end up depending on probably the game in question, you know, because you can't market your way out of a bad game. If the game sucks, people are still going to figure it out. It might take them a little bit longer if you hide it from reviews and do this sort of stuff. But like, word of mouth is still word of mouth. I don't care who you pay to play your game. Eventually people will realize a shit game is shit. But, you know, so you would hear mixed results on those sorts of campaigns of like, hey, we paid a guy to stream this and no one pre-ordered it. Or we got, you know, 4 additional pre-orders, you know, like whatever it was. And so there was cases where that stuff just didn't seem to be working out. And I've heard success stories that are on the other side of that. They're like, actually, we did this and it led to this. And, you know, like, so I don't think that's 100% across the board, but I remember big publishers who went all in on an influencer marketing strategy were feeling like, oh man, this is breaking in a couple of different ways. A, you know, it's not leading to increased sales. B, a lot of these people we're doing these deals with are unprofessional. And so they are leaking our games early because they think that they're superstars and they can get away with it. And oh shit, they kind of can. And so you had a lot of weird situations where And I think that end of the market is cleaned up a lot too. I think the people that are out there that are streaming on Twitch full time or YouTube, some people move to YouTube. You see more and more people playing games on TikTok now. I think a lot of those people have become sophisticated enough that they are running a sound business and that they're not just like being weird and not being like, guess what game I just saw the other day? It's like, no, they're doing business. They're in business. They're not here to leak games ahead of schedule and all this other stuff. They're being paid to play. And they're much more professional about that now than maybe they used to be. At least the bigger ones. I'm sure there's probably some mid-tier, smaller ones that will maybe get a little buck wild at times. But anyway, it's just been a very fascinating, I guess, like the last decade, really, but really probably like the last 15 years watching that stuff change. But the acceleration in that change has really been over the last decade. And I think that all of those things are factors, to get back to the question, as to why game releases often don't feel as big as they did before. And that's just because people get their information in so many different ways now. And I think I honestly think it's a good thing, generally speaking, because you don't have that like monopolistic like control over a market. The influence of an IGN, the influence of any one media outlet, any one streamer even doesn't feel overbearing. That's not to say that anyone can go hit go on a Twitch stream and be big overnight. I mean, obviously it's a grind. It's, there are a ton of small streamers out there putting in the fucking work and doing fun shit, cool shit, innovative shit. Like, that's way more exciting to me than, here's some guy with 60,000 people watching him and what's he talking about? Like, oh, he's kind of playing a game, but really he's talking about YouTube drama. It's like, who fucking cares about that bullshit? Yeah, I think there's a lot of corny shit out there, but there's a lot of innovative shit happening out there too. And I think that the industry is generally better for it, but at the same time, you're right. It doesn't feel like that there's those big signpost moments of just like, look at how fucking big video games are. But I think the answer is it's because people just realize that video games are big and it's done. It's like, hey, guess what? Video games are massive. It's a massive business. You don't need to to really go through that sort of stuff anymore. Brad has an interesting question here that I had not considered, but also I don't. Well, let's hear. With all of the console prices going up, do you think Stadia will have a comeback? Take care. No, I don't. But if we think about the stated goals of Xbox's streaming stuff, of the xCloud stuff, especially because Stadia is a little bit different because they were trying to sell their games, and also Stadia is Stadia. Let's be honest. If you look at the stated goal of finding ways to bring console-style video games to an audience of players that don't want to or can't buy a console, that larger mainstream audience, that when they talk about, like, we want to get 1 billion screens, like all the Phil Spencer stuff, all the Xbox stuff of how they want to expand the market and all this other shit, console prices going up is something that ends up, potentially benefiting those types of subscription services. I feel like they don't have real penetration though. Like, the xCloud stuff kind of came out and it's there and you can do it. And I'll grant you it's the circles that I run in to a certain extent, which is they are circles of people who like to buy consoles and people who understand why streaming is a second-class experience at best. But I'm sure that there are probably people out there who don't care. They don't care enough about the quality of the experience to demand the best-in-class hardware, the best stuff. For them, being able to play it at all is good enough. And for them, if they're like, hey, I can play this game on my phone and I can do this, and And maybe that benefits big mainstream games. Like, hey, I can play this Xbox version of NBA 2K, which I think actually you can't, because it's just stuff that's on Game Pass, right? I can play that on my phone. In some cases, they've done good at adding touchscreen interfaces and stuff to some of these games, though generally you're going to have a better time tethering a controller to your phone. But this is something you can do. And so as console prices go up, the more mainstream consumer, the more price-sensitive consumer, you might see some of them, if the option presents itself, say like, oh, I would love to get an Xbox eventually, but for now, the Xbox streaming service is enough. I don't know. There's probably not a ton of people that are in that boat, right? But I'm sure there are probably some. I'm saying it's possible, but also Xbox has not raised its price, and the Sony end of things, their streaming stuff is not as robust. So it doesn't quite line up. Kyle from Lawrence, Kansas, has an interesting theory. No, as an interest. This would be cool. This would be cool, is what I think. Kyle says, during the most recent podcast, there was a lot of discussion about how Halo Infinite, sorry, what am I? About how Halo Infinite doesn't have enough maps. There was also some news about how people are complaining to regulators that Microsoft will soon own Call of Duty and will corner the market on first-person shooters. Obviously, Nuketown specifically is tiny and probably not good at all with the slower time to kill in Halo, but is there any reason they can't add maps from other Microsoft properties like Doom, Quake, Call of Duty, or even the older Halo games? I feel like you could cherry pick some real bangers from their existing catalog and solve the lack of map problem pretty quickly. So, Kyle, I'm going to say it's not that easy. These map formats are not interchangeable, and the maps are not going to just drop into a game with no additional balance and weapon placement and all of that sort of stuff, right? That's a much harder. So I'm going to say that's not necessarily a solution for the Halo Infinite problem, because you would still have to do quite a bit of work to do that sort of stuff, and the benefit might not always be clear. But would I love to see that work get done and see Nuketown show up in Halo, or fucking The Longest Yard? Put The Longest Yard in Halo Infinite. Put that fucking Quake 3 map into Halo Infinite. I know it's not just drop in and go, but like, do the work to make that actually as awesome as it could be, and do it. Wouldn't that be fucking awesome? That'd be fucking awesome. Put facing worlds into Fortnite. I think that type of map crossover would be extremely fun and really neat when you see some of these IPs come together and that sort of stuff. I think it would be really fascinating to see that done. It would be weird. It would take way more work than you're thinking to make that actually fun and not just a weird gimmick. But that'd be kind of cool. That would be kind of cool. Like a small team 4v4 Halo match on one of the 9,000 different versions of Nuketown would be fucking neat. Go and put, yeah, and then vice versa. Go put some Halo maps, and I'm trying to think like Halo. I just don't know the names of a lot of Halo maps. Blood Gulch, that's a Halo map, right? Put that in something. Let's see here. We got a couple more. Vivi writes in and says, I found myself watching a playlist of game room videos. Back in ancient history here, I played something called the Microsoft Game Room, which was a series. It's an emulation front end for a lot of stuff, if you're not familiar. And I was trying to understand how and why Microsoft botched it so horribly. According to the things you mentioned in those videos, Microsoft had high ambitions for the platform. Ultimately, though, it became a dumping ground of mostly Atari, Intellivision, and Konami games with control schemes not really fit for a standard controller. Do you think it was a mistake to focus on games that only old heads could appreciate, or was it just a case of those were the only sorts of games they could get the rights for? Yeah, so Game Room, they did some business deals early on to bring games to Game Room, and so you saw Pitfall and you saw Time Pilot and a lot, just a variety of emulated arcade and console games came to the Game Room platform. And you would load up Game Room and you could purchase games there. A lot of the games also came out on Windows Phone. Man, there's a lot of Windows Phone talk on this week's show. It's the dark portent. I don't know. And so you could play a lot of Activision's 2600 library there and a bunch of Intellivision games, which are always terrible because the controller just didn't adapt well. And so basically they would sell these games piecemeal. You could spend quarters to play them. You could spend Microsoft points, I believe, to play them once if you wanted to. But the idea is that you would pay, I believe $5 was the going rate. No, I'm sorry. Was it $3? Was it $3 and then $5? Because they sold it on multiple platforms. So the Game Room games, some of them would come to Windows Phone and to Xbox. And so there was a bundle price where you pay one price and get it on all platforms. PC. Did it? Maybe it came to PC. No, they didn't. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, maybe it was $3. Yeah. Is Bryn, you're probably right. It was $3 for one platform, $5 for both. Anyway, they had a set price for every single game. So if you wanted, and they would sell them in packs as well, so you could buy the whole pack and stuff like that. But the idea was that you would pay one price and you would have access to this game, and it was the same price for every game. Good or bad, big or small. And so you would eventually you ran into publishers that felt that their game catalog was worth more money than that, and they wanted more money. And the Game Room was not really set up to do that. They were trying to just charge the same price for all of those games. And so, for a lot of companies, it wasn't worth it for them to even come to the table because the amount of money was so low that, to get, Sega, Capcom, whatever it was, to get them to show up and be like, okay, yeah, you can emulate our games and do all this other work. Like it just wasn't happening. And so the initial deals they did ended up being the only deals that surfaced. Now, my understanding is that in Australia, where Game Room was being developed, they had builds of it that were running fucking SNK games and a lot of other stuff because at times that stuff was in the works business-wise. And the deals just didn't happen, and Game Room died. It was a beautiful idea, but the money just didn't make sense for a lot of publishers. And now we see, look at the Arcade Archives series that is still running on PlayStation platforms. It's also on Switch. I mean, it is on Xbox as well. But Hamster, the fine folks at Hamster doing their emulation work and bringing those old arcade games out onto current console platforms. Those things are $8. That's a lot of money for honestly a shit ass arcade game. And some of them are shit ass, I will say. Hello to folks raiding in from Abby's stream. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Some of those games are not worth $8. Some of those games are fucking bad. You just gotta own up to that. But they still try to sell them for $8 a piece because that's what they can do. That's what makes these publishers go like, yeah, okay, if you're going to sell these games for $8 each, then that values our IP. That values this, like all that other horseshit. And so that gets them to the table, gets them to negotiate and all that other stuff. And most of the games on the Hamster stuff, it's a weird catalog over there at Hamster Corp. And so I think it just became a business thing of just like, they're just like, fuck it. We're not going to do it for the amount of money you're offering. And so Microsoft was just kind of asked out. They had this platform that they had launched that they thought they'd be able to do more business with, and it just never happened. And so it died. It's a shame. Game Room had some neat ideas. Last question here from Ben in Albany. Ben from Albany here. Do you have TV at the gas pumps where you are? We have them, and it is fascinating. It's like an even further condensed version of the pre-roll before movies, or what I assume they air on The Chive, covering things like sports highlights entertainment news, and the word of the day. If so, have you ever looked into how that content gets provided? If Maria Menounos can half tell me how to make a recipe at the gas pump, I think that Jeff Gerstmann should be there doing gaming as well. Enjoying your work these days. Looking forward to much more. Thank you, Ben. Those content licensing deals, sometimes it's content that exists in another format just being recut, and sometimes it is content being recorded specifically for those platforms. Back in the day, we had situations where we were doing a weekly news spot for Target that I believe was called The Circle. I forget. Rich Gallup hosted it. He would remember the name, I'm sure. But he had to write and produce a thing that went into Target every week, and I guess aired on Target's televisions in their TV section or something. And so, but there were some cases where, like, you know, we did a deal back in the day where a lot of video reviews that I had done got cut up and repurposed for, or not that I did, that everyone had done, got cut up and repurposed for some HD television network and all of that sort of stuff. So, you know, some of it just ends up being a deal where you can recut existing content and throw it out there, or you're doing it one-off custom because you've got to say, like, for Target, I'm Rich Gallup, or, you know, whatever it is. And so that gas pump stuff is probably big enough that they record it custom. But maybe you have a situation where you've written one script and you're going to do it 5 different ways for 5 different partners if you're in that business deep, right? And so you're like, okay, now I'm on the Chive, and now for the Chive, I'm Rich Gallup. Is that what Rich is doing? Has he announced where he's going yet? Go to the Chive. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, that stuff works different ways depending on who is doing it and when. I don't know specifically how the back of the taxi or the gas pump videos happen per se, but yeah, my guess is that it's just like someone in the studio just knocking this shit out one day a month, just come in here and do all this stuff, unless it's like meant to be timely. I'm sure the news segments have to be done more frequently, but you know, I did that stuff for CBS Radio back in the day, and that stuff was real down and dirty. That stuff was just, I just wrote it and recorded it, and I sent it off to someone, and there used to be someone internally that handled it, and he put like very loving touches on it and music beds and all this other stuff, and it was this well-produced, nice thing, and he gave me feedback, and it was an awesome experience, top to bottom. I loved working with Steven, who did that stuff then. And then when he left, and then I think the radio stations got sold, and so maybe some other stuff changed. Anyway, they just dumped me on this external firm of producers who just took what I recorded, and as far as I know, just listened to it a couple times, maybe EQ'd it or cleaned it up ever so slightly, and just dumped it on the air. And so I heard a recording. I was talking about this last night with Marco, and John, and some of this stuff just ended up not getting any attention and just being thrown on the radio with no music under it. It wasn't made tight. It wasn't made nice. And so it was just like, that really disillusioned me. I was like, why am I even doing this? Like, no one gives a shit about this. It airs at 3 a.m. in most markets. Like, fuck it. And so I was just like, hey, how about I stop doing this radio thing? It's fucking pointless. And then on the other end, when I wrote to them and said, hey, I was thinking about stopping doing this, they were like, yeah, that's great. Yes. Cool. Good. This is a waste of time. It has never benefited the brand that I am being paid to promote once. So F it. But it was really fun for a while there. Anyway, that stuff probably all happens in a similar way. The gas station stuff. There was a while that we had, I think Chris Waters hosted something that aired on televisions in Costco. And so content was getting chopped up and repurposed for these kind of hosted segments that would air, that were in every Costco. So you might be walking through a Costco and see Chris Waters talking about video games, which is pretty sweet. Yeah, so it kind of just depends on how the deal is done and what their requirements are and all this other stuff. Is how all that stuff works as far as I can tell. Anyway, that's going to do it for the show. A lot of deep explanations of fucking very insane topics there near the end of the show through the email segment. So thanks everyone for that. And someone saying, well, at least you got paid for it. Oh, I mean, no, I didn't get paid extra for it. No, I got paid fine. Up to a point. And so that's going to do it for the show. But if you're here live, I'm going to be back on in a couple hours to talk about to talk all over the Sony thing. That's going to be only 20 minutes, but hopefully they've got something. Hopefully they've got something. The Nintendo thing this morning was maybe not my cup of tea. It's one of those things we watch that Nintendo Direct and you're like, there's good shit in here. Like undeniably, there's stuff on this stream that's like, yes, they should make these games. I'm not necessarily going buck wild, jumping out of my seat to play much of any of that stuff that was newly announced, but with the potential exception of the Fist of the North Star fitness game, that looks great. But the rest of that stuff, hey, it's cool that it's happening. And this new Legend of Zelda, like that'll probably be fine, right? I mean, I don't think it showed all that well in their little non-show of their show, but hey. Yeah, so what else? So we'll be back to talk over the Sony stuff, and I'll be back a little bit later in the week. I'm going to mess around with the wiring behind my television, and potentially we will play some Splatoon 3 so you can watch me suck live. Ugh. Yeah, I get lit up so bad. I am sucking at Splatoon 3. But I am still enjoying it just the same. So, whatever. Maybe we'll get into that if I can get that stuff wired up. If not, hey, there are other video games, or maybe we'll just hang out and shoot the shit. Have a shit shooting stream. Good old fashioned shit shooting. That doesn't feel right when I say it. That feels bad when I say it. All right, and then of course, Friday we'll be back. We'll do some other stuff. Potentially some Dragon's Dogma. I put the question to people over at patreon.com, Jeff Gerstmann. Patreon.com/Jeff Gerstmann. Dumbass. About Dragon's Dogma. Do people want to see more of it? Got mixed results, which is what I was anticipating, honestly. It seems like the people that are into it are into it. The people that are not are like, you could do something else. So I don't know. I kind of want to see it through, to be honest, but I don't know. We'll see. What form should that take? I don't know about the Temple of the... I want to return to the Temple of the Dog. But maybe we'll find the right way to do that. And all that sort of stuff. Anyway, have a good rest of your week. If you're just a podcast listener and I'm not going to see you on any of these streams or other videos, then I will see you next Tuesday for another podcast. Otherwise, hey, I got this freaking YouTube channel. You can go to guard.bike and see these videos of me playing video games. That's a thing. People are into it. You can hit me up here on twitch.tv/Jeff Gerstmann. Happy September to those who celebrate. And all that shit. Patreon, Twitch, YouTube, the Holy Trinity. The Holy Trinity of websites. Be back soon with more stuff. I'll be back in a couple hours here, if you're watching live again, to see what the hell Sony's got going on. We shall see. I'll see you soon. Everybody, have a good one.